As many long-time followers of this channel may already be aware, Northern Ireland endured one of the most brutal and tumultuous periods in its history, known as the Troubles, a violent intercommunal conflict that spanned from the late 1960s to 1998. This conflict resulted in over 3,000 lives lost and left deep scars on the communities involved. Throughout this time, Northern Ireland was gripped by bombing campaigns, sectarian violence, street riots, and violent clashes between paramilitary organizations, the British Army, and local police forces. The violence seemed inescapable, permeating every corner of the region. In a landscape of daily terror, families and communities found themselves caught in a nightmare of uncertainty, loss, and grief. What is perhaps less widely known, however, are the extreme depths of depravity and brutality that emerged from this conflict, with some of the most horrific and senseless acts carried out by various factions, their names becoming synonymous with unspeakable cruelty. One of the most infamous of these groups was the Provisional Irish Republican Army, IRA, a militant nationalist group that fought for the reunification of Ireland and the end of British rule in Northern Ireland. The IRA was notorious for its bombings, assassinations, kidnappings, and other forms of violent activism. Among their most notorious acts was the kneecapping, a form of punishment in which individuals accused of being informers or criminals would have their knees shattered by a gunshot, rendering them permanently disabled as a warning to others. However, the IRA was not the only group to perpetrate horrific acts of violence. The Loyalist factions, which opposed the IRA and were determined to maintain Northern Ireland's union with Britain, were equally brutal in their methods. One such faction, which is often less talked about but was every bit as deadly, was the Shankill Butchers. This group, composed of men from Loyalist communities, became infamous during the 1970s for a series of abductions, brutal killings, and tortures that shocked even the most hardened individuals familiar with the violence of the Troubles. Operating under the banner of the Ulster Volunteer Force, UVF, the Shankill Butchers engaged in some of the most grisly and disturbing murders in modern British history. Their violent spree, which lasted from 1975 until 1977, left a bloody trail of death and fear, and their notoriety reached a level so high that they earned the chilling title of the worst serial killers in the history of the UK. Despite their immense brutality, the Shankill Butchers remain largely overshadowed by other elements of the Troubles, and their acts of violence are often overlooked in favour of the larger ideological battles between nationalists and unionists. The Shankill Butchers were named after Shankill Road, a working-class neighbourhood in West Belfast that was a stronghold of Loyalist ideology. The area was situated near the Falls Road, a predominantly Catholic neighbourhood, making it a focal point for sectarian violence between Protestant Loyalists and Catholic nationalists. The proximity between these two opposing communities set the stage for intense violence, with frequent riots, attacks, and retaliations taking place between the groups. Shankill Road itself was home to several Loyalist groups, with the UVF and other similar organisations engaging in a violent war against both the IRA and Catholic civilians. These conflicts were marked by brutal killings, bombings, and reprisals, all driven by deep-rooted animosity and hatred between the two factions. The UVF, a paramilitary group founded in the early 20th century, played a central role in the violent escalation during the Troubles. Though originally formed to resist Irish nationalism and prevent Ireland's independence, the UVF transformed over the decades into a deadly force, especially in Northern Ireland, where they targeted IRA members and Irish nationalists. Their activities ranged from armed attacks on nationalist areas to bombings in both Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. One of the most notorious actions of the UVF was the 1974 Dublin and Molyneux bombings, in which 35 civilians were killed and more than 200 were injured. While the UVF's main focus was on the IRA, The group regularly carried out sectarian killings, targeting Catholic civilians in indiscriminate attacks. The phrase, "if you can't get an IRA man, get a tag," a derogatory term for Catholics, encapsulated their belief that all Catholics were enemies of their cause, regardless of whether they had any association with the IRA. Amid this violent and chaotic backdrop, the Shankill Butchers emerged as one of the most horrific and fearsome groups. Operating out of Shankill Road, they went on a killing spree that involved abducting men, torturing them, and then murdering them in grotesque ways. Their victims were often random individuals, and they would be taken, sometimes from the street or their homes, and subjected to brutal treatment. The victims were stabbed, beaten, and sometimes dismembered, and their bodies would often be dumped in public places as a grim warning to others. The butchers' methods were horrifically methodical, relying on butcher knives and other instruments of death, and their actions terrified not only the Catholic community, but also those within the Loyalist community who dared to oppose them. Their reign of terror began in 1975, starting with a series of brutal murders and kidnappings that gained widespread media attention. The Shankill Butchers' victims were often ordinary working-class men who had no direct ties to the IRA or any political organization. Yet the group showed no mercy, operating on the belief that any Catholic, no matter their background, was fair game. One of their earliest victims was a young Catholic man named John McKee, who was abducted, tortured, and murdered in a way that shocked the community. The Butchers' killings were so gruesome and devoid of any semblance of human compassion that they became a terrifying symbol of the deep sectarian divide that had come to define Northern Ireland during the Troubles. The Shankill Butchers were led by Lenny Murphy, a man whose bloodlust was as infamous as his crimes. Murphy was a young man born into the heart of the Shankill Road neighborhood, where he was steeped in Loyalist ideology. He quickly became a notorious figure in Belfast, known for his extreme violence and hatred for Catholics. Murphy's rise to prominence began as a member of the UVF, but his ruthlessness and appetite for bloodshed soon led him to form the Shankill Butchers. It was under his leadership that the group carried out its most horrendous acts of violence. Murphy's sadistic tendencies were evident early on, and he seemed to revel in the fear and terror he instilled in the community. His brutality was unmatched, and he personally participated in many of the killings, often taking part in the torture of victims. Murphy's actions were not just the product of personal hatred, but also a reflection of the larger, deeply entrenched political and sectarian divides that gripped Northern Ireland. The Loyalist community, fearing the growing influence of the nationalist cause and the threat of an all-Ireland republic, saw such extreme measures as a necessary defense of their identity and way of life. The Shankill Butchers, operating with the tacit support of some within their community, believed that their acts of violence were justified by the broader cause of preserving the union with Britain. Their blood-soaked campaign of terror was meant not only to exact revenge on the Catholic nationalist population, but also to send a clear message that the Loyalist community would not back down, no matter the cost. The group's crimes continued unabated until the authorities finally began to close in. In 1977, after a series of police operations and intelligence gathering, several key members of the Shankill Butchers were arrested and convicted. The investigations that led to their arrest were fraught with difficulty, as the local community was hesitant to cooperate with the police due to fears of reprisal from the Butchers. However, once arrested, the perpetrators were put on trial, and many were convicted of multiple murders. The gang's leader, Lenny Murphy, was sentenced to life in prison for his role in the murders, though he was killed by the IRA in 1982, further complicating the web of violence that characterized the Troubles. Despite their capture, the legacy of the Shankill Butchers lived on. The brutality of their actions remains a haunting reminder of the extreme violence that consumed Northern Ireland during the Troubles. For many, Their crimes are a symbol of the deep hatred and sectarian divisions that led to so much bloodshed. While the peace process brought about the signing of the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, which helped bring an end to the Troubles, the scars of violence and mistrust still linger in many parts of Northern Ireland. The story of the Shankill Butchers and the atrocities they committed remains a chilling reminder of the horrors that human beings can inflict on one another when driven by hatred and political ideologies. Today, Northern Ireland continues to struggle with the legacy of the Troubles. While significant strides have been made in terms of peace and political stability, the wounds of the past are not easily healed. The communities most affected by the violence of the Troubles still grapple with loss, trauma, and the need for justice and reconciliation. For many, the events of that dark period in Northern Ireland's history remain a painful memory that will never fully fade. The Shankill Butchers, along with the other paramilitary groups, left a mark on the collective consciousness of Northern Ireland that continues to affect both the political landscape and the lives of its citizens. Reflecting on the actions of the Shankill Butchers and the wider impact of the Troubles, we are reminded of the long road ahead and the necessity of ensuring such violence is never repeated. For the victims, their families, and for those who lived through the conflict, the call for reconciliation remains central to the future of Northern Ireland, a place still learning how to heal and rebuild in the aftermath of its bloody past. Micheal Stone remains one of the most controversial and divisive figures in the history of Northern Ireland's Troubles. His name has become synonymous with the violent methods loyalist paramilitaries used in their fight to preserve Northern Ireland's union with Britain. Stone's life story, characterized by violent actions, imprisonment, and attempts at reinvention, offers a glimpse into the political, social, and personal complexities of a man whose actions continue to polarize opinion. His story also serves as a stark example of how the deep divides of sectarian conflict can shape an individual's destiny, leaving behind legacies of violence, bitterness, and unhealed wounds. Born on April 2, 1955, in Harborne, Birmingham, England, Micheal Stone's early years were marked by instability. His parents' troubled relationship led to separation when he was still a baby. His father, Cyril Alfred Stone, was away serving in the Merchant Navy, and his mother, Mary Bridget O'Sullivan, left the family shortly after Michael's birth. Consequently, Stone was placed in the care of his aunt and uncle, John and Margaret Gregg, who lived in Ballyhalbert, Northern Ireland. Growing up in a predominantly Protestant environment, Stone was deeply influenced by his new family's strong loyalist values. However, he faced an internal struggle as he also grew aware of his mother's Catholic heritage. Though baptized into the Church of Ireland, Stone felt a connection to his Catholic roots, and this dual identity became a source of tension throughout his life. While his upbringing with the Greggs provided him with stability, his awareness of his mixed heritage would later contribute to a profound inner conflict. In 1959, the Greggs moved to the Branniel housing estate, located on the outskirts of Belfast, a place where tensions between the Catholic and Protestant communities were reaching new heights. The Troubles had begun to take shape, and the violence that would define Northern Ireland's political landscape for the next few decades began to spread. Stone's school years were marked by frequent conflicts and poor academic performance. He was eventually expelled from Lisnasharrow Secondary School at age 15 for repeated fighting, a sign of his growing aggression and sense of alienation from the society around him. After leaving school with no qualifications, Stone found himself drawn into the violent street culture that permeated Belfast in the early years of the Troubles. As a teenager, he became involved in a gang known as the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang in the Branniel estate. Initially, the gang had a mix of Catholic and Protestant members, but as sectarian tensions deepened, the group fractured, with Stone choosing to align himself more firmly with the Protestant loyalist cause. This moment, marked the beginning of Stone's commitment to loyalism and set him on the path toward paramilitary involvement. By 1971, Stone had joined the Tartan gangs, informal Protestant groups that engaged in acts of vandalism, intimidation, and occasional violence against Catholic communities. These gangs acted as a precursor to the more organized and militarized paramilitary groups that would later dominate the conflict. They helped shape the mindset of young men like Stone, who were ready to take up arms in defense of their community's identity and position within Northern Ireland. Stone's violent tendencies caught the attention of Tommy Heron, a key figure in the Ulster Defence Association, UDA, one of the largest loyalist paramilitary organisations in Northern Ireland. Heron recruited Stone in 1972, marking the beginning of his full-fledged involvement in the paramilitary world. As a new recruit, Stone was subjected to a brutal initiation process, including an order from Heron to kill a dog as a display of loyalty. Stone's compliance solidified his position within the UDA and began his descent into a world of escalating violence. Stone's initial role within the UDA was focused on petty crime and smaller acts of intimidation. His activities included theft, extortion, and working as part of UDA operations to assert control over neighborhoods. One early incident saw Stone arrested for attempting to steal weapons from a sporting goods store in Commer. While minor, the incident highlighted the blurred line between criminal activity and paramilitary operations during the early stages of the Troubles. However, after the assassination of Tommy Heron in 1973, the UDA's Brainial unit began to fragment, leaving Stone with a sense of disillusionment and no clear purpose within the organization. This sense of uncertainty led to a period of drifting as Stone began to question the direction and leadership of the group. His frustration at the lack of strategic focus within the UDA would fuel his eventual decision to seek a more direct and violent role in the conflict. In 1974, Stone joined the Red Hand Commando, RHC, a smaller but highly militant loyalist group known for its secrecy and efficiency. The RHC operated in the shadows, providing support to loyalist politicians and engaging in clandestine operations against the IRA and Catholic communities. Stone took on various roles within the RHC, including offering security for key loyalist leaders like Bill Craig of the Vanguard Unionist Progressive Party. During this time, Stone claimed to have made contact with Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, who allegedly sought to help loyalist groups combat the IRA, viewing the Republican organization as a dangerous force that aligned with global terrorism. Although these claims remain unsubstantiated, Stone's narrative reflects the complex and international dimensions of the Troubles, where alliances and enmities crossed national borders. Despite his involvement in the RHC, Stone grew frustrated with the group's inactivity, which led him to rejoin the UDA by the mid-1980s. This marked the beginning of his most violent and infamous period. When Stone returned to the UDA, it wasn't long before he became part of a specialized unit tasked with eliminating Republican figures. His first confirmed kill came in November 1984 when he shot and killed Patrick Brady, a Catholic milkman he suspected of IRA involvement. Though no evidence ever substantiated the claim that Brady was linked to the IRA, Stone's actions marked the beginning of a brutal campaign of targeted killings. Over the following years, Stone became notorious for his meticulous planning, ability to disguise himself, and his unflinching violence. His reputation as a loyalist assassin grew, and while some within the loyalist community hailed him as a hero, others began to criticize his recklessness and the collateral damage caused by his actions. For Stone, these assassinations were not just acts of political violence. They were personal missions aimed at defending his community and its place within Northern Ireland. Stone's notoriety reached its peak on March 16, 1988, when he launched an attack at Milltown Cemetery in West Belfast. During the funeral of 3 IRA members, killed by British forces in Gibraltar. Armed with grenades, handguns, and knives, Stone attacked the mourners, killing 3 people and injuring more than 60 others. The attack caused panic and confusion as Stone was chased through the cemetery by enraged mourners. He was eventually apprehended, beaten by the crowd, and arrested by the police. The Milltown attack shocked both Loyalists and Republicans alike. While some Loyalists saw Stone as a hero, others believed that the attack had been reckless and damaging to the Unionist cause. For many, it represented the extreme lengths to which Stone and others were willing to go in their fight against republicanism. In 1989, Stone was convicted of 6 murders and sentenced to life in prison. During his time at the Maze prison, he became a significant figure among Loyalist inmates. Stone participated in dialogue with British officials and played a role in shaping the discussions that would eventually lead to the Northern Ireland peace process. The 1998 Good Friday Agreement, which aimed to bring an end to the violence of the Troubles, allowed for Stone's early release in 2000, after he served 13 years in prison. After his release, Stone attempted to reinvent himself as an artist and writer. He began painting scenes of conflict and violence, which garnered mixed reactions. Some saw his artwork as an attempt at reconciliation, while others viewed it as a glorification of the violence he had once engaged in. In 2003, Stone published Stone Cold, an autobiography in which he defended his actions during the Troubles and refused to express regret for the lives he had taken. Stone's attempts at reinvention were short-lived. In 2006, he staged a dramatic and violent act, attempting to storm Stormont with homemade explosives and knives, targeting Sinn Féin leaders Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness. He claimed that the act was performance art, but the courts rejected this explanation, and Stone was sentenced to another 16 years in prison. Stone's life continues to provoke debate. Some Loyalists view him as a hero and defender of Protestant Ulster, while others believe his actions only served to prolong the suffering and division caused by the Troubles. For many, Stone's story is a stark reminder of the destructive power of sectarianism and the human toll of political violence. Micheal Stone's legacy is complex and polarizing, embodying the tragic consequences of Northern Ireland's violent past. His unapologetic stance and the dramatic actions that defined his life continue to stir emotions, raising important questions about the personal cost of political violence and the challenges of reconciliation. What does Micheal Stone's life teach us about the deep scars left by conflict? Lynda Spence, a 27-year-old financial advisor in Glasgow, once epitomized ambition and charm. Outwardly, she managed a thriving mortgage and property business, catering to clients with dreams of luxury and security. Her polished image, marked by visits to upscale hotels, the clink of champagne glasses and stylish cars, belied a life steeped in financial chaos. Overwhelmed by mounting debts and desperate to sustain her glamorous lifestyle, Lynda resorted to deceptive methods. She accepted large deposits from hopeful investors, manipulated documents with alarming ease, and operated under multiple aliases to hide her true financial state. To friends and business partners, she was seen as an entrepreneurial star. Behind closed doors, however, her dealings were rife with fraud and reckless mismanagement that would eventually lead to her undoing. Lynda's ambitions soon pushed her deeper into the murky realm of high-stakes fraud. One particularly audacious scheme promised a staggering return. A mere £85,000 investment was touted to yield a £3.2 million windfall, structured around counterfeit Danish bonds designed to evade taxation. This venture, with its irresistible promise of wealth, lured not only unsuspecting investors, but also dangerous elements from Glasgow's underworld. Among her questionable contacts were individuals with alleged ties to drug trafficking and money laundering, and even an Albanian criminal known as Sokal Zafaj. In a twist that further blurred moral lines, Lynda also agreed to act as an informant for the Scottish Crime and Drug Enforcement Agency. complicating her existence by intertwining legitimate business with covert criminal intrigue. This double life intensified her vulnerability, setting the stage for a catastrophic collision of interests. Amidst her dubious schemes and mounting pressures, Lynda's path crossed with two men whose lives were about to darken irreversibly. Through a mutual associate, Tony Kelly, she was introduced to Colin Coates and Philip Wade, two figures whose turbulent pasts and bitter resentments would soon converge in a deadly act of retribution. Colin Coates, once a promising computer expert in aviation and investment banking, had seen his bright career dimmed by substance abuse and a violent temper. His fall from grace had led him into the realm of organized crime, where his bitterness and thirst for vengeance festered. In contrast, Philip Wade carried the sting of personal financial loss, having trusted Lynda with funds meant for his family during a period of incarceration. Wade's deep-seated resentment soon evolved into a desire for revenge. Together, Coates and Wade saw Lynda not merely as a fraudster, but as an obstacle whose ill-gotten gains needed to be reclaimed by any means necessary. Their alliance, founded on mutual greed and personal vendettas, would ultimately bring about a tragic and irreversible turning point. By early 2011, the noose tightened around Lynda. Mounting pressures from creditors, intensifying law enforcement scrutiny, and demands from her criminal partners left her exposed and desperate. On a grim day in April, Coates and Wade intercepted her on the streets of Glasgow. With no room for negotiation, and in the absence of any witnesses, they forcibly ushered her into a waiting van, a moment that sealed her fate. The journey from the familiar cityscape to the remote environs of West Kilbride was both abrupt and chilling. Lynda was transported to a nondescript flat where the true horror awaited her. In the attic room of the flat, an atmosphere of foreboding had been meticulously crafted. The space was isolated and stripped of any warmth, transformed into a bleak holding cell. There, Lynda was bound to a leather chair with surgical tape, her arms and waist securely immobilized. Two additional men were posted as guards to ensure she could neither escape nor call for help, turning the room into an oppressive prison that would soon become the stage for her unspeakable torment. For 13 excruciating days, the attic morphed into a chamber of relentless brutality. Every day, Coates and Wade returned with a torture kit containing garden loppers, surgical tape, and even a golf club. Their objective was brutally clear: to force Lynda into revealing the financial secrets behind her fraudulent schemes through physical and psychological domination. The methods they employed were deliberately vicious. Lynda was burned with a hot iron, leaving scars that would serve as lasting reminders of her agony. She endured repeated beatings with the golf club and other implements, and in a series of horrific acts, her captors severed her fingers and crushed her toes. Each brutal act was designed to diminish her spirit and break her will, ensuring that she remained silent. The torture was compounded by the fact that Lynda was forced to remain bound to the chair throughout her captivity. Denied even the most basic human dignity, she was made to relieve herself in the very space where she suffered, a constant and degrading reminder of her helplessness. Adding to her isolation, Coates manipulated her personal communications. Using her mobile and email accounts, he sent misleading messages to her family, fabricating an illusion of safety and normalcy, even as she languished in relentless pain. This added cruelty deepened her isolation, intensifying the despair that accompanied every moment of her ordeal. After 13 days of ceaseless torment, the captors resolved that Lynda's silence had become intolerable. Around April 28, 2011, they reached a chilling decision to end her suffering once and for all. Testimonies from those involved suggest that Colin Coates led the final act of cruelty, reportedly executing Lynda in a manner so brutal that he severed her head before disposing of her remains, in a calculated effort to thwart detection. The method of disposal was executed with meticulous care, ensuring that Lynda Spence's body would remain unrecovered, thus deepening the mystery and horror surrounding her tragic demise. Lynda's sudden disappearance sent shockwaves through her family and the wider community. Her parents, Patricia and Jim, reported her missing on May 13th, launching an urgent search for answers that quickly turned into a desperate quest for truth. As public appeals were broadcast, investigators began to unravel the chilling trail left behind in that isolated attic. Forensic evidence, including traces of blood, fingerprints, and digital data recovered from her phone, combined with brave testimonies from guards who later cooperated with authorities in exchange for reduced sentences. These accounts, despite the absence of Lynda's physical remains, provided irrefutable evidence of the systematic torture and the network of criminals responsible for her abduction and murder. The case eventually reached Glasgow's High Court, where the full extent of the atrocity was laid bare over a rigorous 46-day trial. In February 2013, the jury delivered a verdict that sent ripples of shock through the community. Colin Coates and Philip Wade were found guilty of orchestrating the abduction, prolonged torture, and murder of Lynda Spence. Coates was sentenced to life imprisonment with a mandatory minimum term of 33 years before any possibility of parole, while Wade received a minimum term of 30 years. Lesser accomplices involved in the crime also faced significant prison terms. The severity of these sentences underscored the court's determination to hold the perpetrators accountable for their unspeakable actions. Though the verdict brought legal closure, the emotional and social scars left by Lynda's fate continue to haunt the community. Her case stands as a somber testament to the destructive power of unchecked greed and brutality. In the wake of the trial, Lynda Spence's case ignited widespread debate over vulnerability, exploitation, and the urgent need for enhanced oversight in both financial practices and criminal networks. Community leaders, advocacy groups, and policymakers called for reforms designed to protect individuals from predatory schemes and violent retribution. The tragedy underscored the stark reality that a life built on deception and the lure of easy money can quickly unravel, leaving irreversible damage to families and society as a whole. Her story emerged as a powerful cautionary tale, a reminder that even those who project success and glamour may be entangled in dangerous, self-destructive paths. Years after the trial, the legacy of Lynda Spence remains a subject of painful reflection and intense debate. To some, she symbolizes the perils of living a double life, caught between the glittering allure of wealth and the dangerous entanglements of criminality. Others view her primarily as a tragic victim, ensnared by circumstances that spiraled out of control despite her own missteps. Her fate serves as a lasting lesson about the high cost of deception and the inevitable clash between criminal ambition and the uncompromising demands of justice. The Lynda Spence case endures as one of Scotland's most disturbing criminal episodes, a narrative where ambition, fraud, and relentless brutality converged with devastating consequences. While legal justice was ultimately served, the prolonged torture continued to haunt those left behind. Her story stands as a powerful call to vigilance, urging society to confront the forces of greed and violence head-on so that such dark chapters in human history are never repeated.
It all started with a minor altercation at a Manchester nightclub, where tensions flared as a drink was hurled between two rival groups. The root cause was seemingly trivial, a dispute over the authenticity of a Breitling watch purchased by one individual from another, which turned out to be counterfeit. However, this seemingly inconsequential incident ignited a series of violent events spanning 4 years. This period saw a surge in brutality, including 2 murders, numerous shootings, and a relentless cycle of revenge attacks reminiscent of the infamous gun violence era in Manchester. At the heart of this chaos was Mark Fellows, dubbed the Iceman for his calm demeanor. Fellows played a central role in the escalation of violence, ultimately earning himself a place among the rare few in England and Wales sentenced to life without parole. His conviction stemmed from the brutal killings of his rivals, Paul Massey and John Kinsella. In a chilling display of ruthlessness, fellows gunned down Massey with an Uzi submachine gun in 2015, followed by the calculated execution of Kinsella 3 years later. These murders reverberated throughout the criminal underworld of northwest England, sending shockwaves through its ranks. Massey, once known for his involvement in the drug trade during Manchester's rave scene, maintained a significant presence in Salford despite his controversial past. Kinsella, on the other hand, commanded both respect and fear, having famously intervened to protect former England footballer Steven Gerrard from harm, solidifying his reputation as a formidable enforcer in Merseyside. The fact that Kinsella served as a pallbearer at Massey's funeral underscores the complexity of their relationship. The unresolved murders of Massey and Kinsella cast a long shadow over the Greater Manchester Police for 3 years. With a daunting list of 112 potential suspects, including key figures from the Salford underworld, detectives faced an uphill battle. The pervasive silence of the public, driven by fear of reprisal, only added to the challenge of bringing those responsible to justice. Let's delve into it. Paul Massey was a prominent figure in and around Manchester, earning the moniker Salford's Mr. Big, following a contentious council meeting in 1992 where accusations linked him to civil disturbances in the city. Over the years, he wielded significant influence in certain areas of Salford, drawing the attention of law enforcement eager to apprehend him. Despite this, he garnered admiration from some quarters for his vocal opposition to heroin, which he expressed through stickers plastered on lampposts, warning against its use with the stark message, "You smack and get smacked." In April 2015, amidst rumors suggesting his involvement in mediating a series of violent incidents, Massey denied any such role, refuting claims that police had approached him for assistance. A former associate alleged to the media that Massey met his demise while attempting to broker peace between warring factions as their conflicts escalated. Police suspected Massey's affiliation with one group, dubbed the A-Team, while their rivals, known as the Anti-A-Team, were believed to have ordered his assassination. On the fateful evening of July 26, 2015, Massey pulled into a bargain booze store on the outskirts of Manchester in his silver BMW 5 Series, returning from a less-than-relaxing trip to Winkup's holiday camp on the North Wales coast. However, his getaway offered no respite as he was besieged by incessant calls on 2 mobile phones, with numerous individuals seeking his aid, burdening him further amid mounting tensions. As Massey entered the store, his routine purchase of Bacardi and Coke followed, along with a customary tip for the cashier, before he swiftly exited within a minute. Unbeknownst to him, a shadowy figure trailed him, mere seconds behind. Returning from his vacation, Massey spent the afternoon with 2 associates before making a stop at a bookie. His next destination was the purchase of his favored Bacardi and Coke, culminating in his arrival at his spacious colonial-style home, nestled away from the bustling road behind wrought iron gates. Little did Massey know, an assailant had been alerted to his whereabouts by the individual tailing him. Patiently lying in wait nearby, the attacker seized the moment as Massey stepped out of his vehicle at precisely 7:27 p.m., disguised with a fake beard and clad in combat attire. The tall and athletic figure brandished an Uzi and unleashed a barrage of bullets. This chilling scene unfolded just as Massey had predicted in a BBC interview from the late 1990s, where he had resignedly acknowledged the risks, saying, "If it's meant to happen, it's meant to happen." In the chaos of the driveway, Massey felt a searing pain in his left shin as bone fragments scattered on the gravel. The impact caused him to drop the Bacardi bottle, shattering it, and a bullet tore through 3 fingers on his right hand, severing one completely. Despite these grievous wounds, Massey managed to seek refuge behind nearby trash bins and dialed emergency services for assistance. The assailant approached the bins with confidence, relentlessly firing at Massey. Among the hail of 18 bullets unleashed, one proved devastating. It tore through Massey's 5th rib on his left side, piercing his chest cavity and causing extensive damage to his heart, lungs, and back. As blood filled Massey's chest and stained the ground beneath him, the shooter swiftly made his escape. Crossing the street and darting through the graveyard of the parish church of St. Anne, the assailant disappeared into a wooded area, Waste no time, he hopped onto a bicycle and vanished from the scene. The bold getaway of Massey's killer seized the attention of British tabloids, drawing parallels to the gripping narratives of shows like Peaky Blinders or The Sopranos. Despite authorities identifying over 100 persons of interest, the case remained unresolved. To unravel the mystery surrounding the high-profile assassination, one must grasp the essence of the Salford Code, encapsulated in two simple words: don't grass. This unwritten rule of silence permeated the community, adding layers of complexity to the investigation. On May 5, 2018, John Kinsella, a father of two, was taking a leisurely walk with his American bulldogs near Junction 7 of the M62 at Rainhill, accompanied by his pregnant partner, Wendy Owen. Suddenly, they were approached from behind by an individual wearing a mask and a high-visibility vest, riding a mountain bike. In a calculated attack, the masked assailant shot Kinsella twice in the back, causing him to collapse instantly. Witnessing the brutal assault, Miss Owen described how the assailant, later identified as the Iceman, calmly approached her injured partner and callously fired 2 additional shots at close range into the back of his head. Despite extensive investigations, CCTV footage failed to capture the actual murder, but did show an unidentified man riding a bicycle towards Kinsella's residence around 5 a.m. While the man's identity remained concealed, he bore a striking resemblance to Fellows. Consequently, on May 30, 2018, authorities apprehended Fellows upon his arrival at Manchester Airport from Amsterdam. He was suspected of being responsible for both murders, but remained tight-lipped during police interviews. In the hours following Kinsella's murder, Mark Fellows spent time with his mother at the Trafford Centre, dining at ZZ Restaurant, and splurging on a pair of trendy 165 mallet trainers from JD Sports. Later, he socialized with friends at the pub and enjoyed a meal at KFC before jetting off to Amsterdam for a holiday. Despite the gravity of the allegations against him, Fellows displayed no signs of anxiety or remorse if he indeed carried out the murder. Fellows had long been on the radar of authorities due to his ties with the Anti-A team. His association with the group gained attention when he was wounded in the buttocks shortly after Massey's murder, yet he had never faced arrest, despite having a criminal record with 5 convictions for offenses like robbery and illegal possession of ammunition. Notably, his past didn't suggest any involvement in assassination activities. With his square jawline and slender physique more reminiscent of a runner than a seasoned assassin, Fellows led a seemingly quiet life in Salford. Born and raised in Salford, Fellows dealt with the challenges of a childhood illness, necessitating the use of a colostomy bag. Despite this, he was meticulous about his personal hygiene and well-being. With 2 young children to care for, Fellows worked night shifts as a sous chef, specializing in sauce preparation for a company that produced chilled and frozen foods. While evidence against him was circumstantial, law enforcement found a suspicious smartphone in his possession, modified to enter an encrypted mode with a specific combination of buttons. Although not illegal in itself, this discovery piqued detectives' interest, raising questions about why someone would possess such a device unless involved in illicit activities. Furthermore, suspicions intensified when a suspected accomplice, Stephen Boyle, was apprehended. Prosecutors alleged that Boyle, a friend and associate of Fellows, had trailed Massey in a car after his stop at Bargain Booze in 2015 and had been lying in wait in 2018, signaling Fellows when Kinsella and his dogs approached. Like Fellows, Boyle, age 35, had a history of minor convictions. Upon his arrest at a hotel near Manchester, Boyle's cryptic statement hinted at his knowledge. "I haven't murdered anybody, but I probably know more things about it than I should." While intriguing, Boyle's words fell short of providing concrete evidence. The police needed something tangible to tie him to the crimes. Their opportunity came during a raid on Mark Fellows' apartment, where they scoured for any connections to the murders. While they didn't find the bicycle seen in CCTV footage or a murder weapon, they stumbled upon a seemingly insignificant item that would unravel both cases: a Garmin Forerunner 10 GPS watch. Fellows, an avid long-distance runner, relied on his Garmin Forerunner 10 GPS watch to track his runs. He had recently completed the 10K segment of the Great Manchester Run in an impressive 47 minutes, captured in official race photos showing him crossing the finish line with his disheveled hair and the Garmin watch strapped to his wrist. Investigators extracted data from the device, revealing not only Fellows' running activities, but also a series of reconnaissance missions. Interestingly, he had deliberately refrained from using the watch during his travels to and from the murder scenes. 3 months prior to Massey's murder, Fellows had journeyed from his Salford home to the field near Massey's residence. The watch data indicated cycling speeds rather than walking, and a manual pause in location tracking while he stood near a small stone church. He spent approximately 8 minutes there, evidently scouting the area and planning his escape route. This crucial evidence, combined with Boyle's loose lips, provided the breakthrough needed to link Fellows to both murders. The trial that followed was marked by unprecedented levels of security, surpassing any previous cases seen by prosecutors. At Liverpool Crown Court, the jury was strictly shielded from photography, and mobile phone usage was strictly prohibited. Over the 6-week trial, the prosecution argued that Fellows had been contracted for both murders, with Boyle aiding him each time. Fellows' defense attorney opted not to present any witnesses, while Boyle's defense, arguing his role as a spotter, called Boyle himself to testify. During his testimony, Boyle shocked the courtroom once more, denying involvement in Massey's murder but admitting to being present at Kinsella's murder under the belief it was a drug deal. He claimed Fellows had then killed Kinsella and handed him a revolver concealed in a sock within a backpack. The prosecution scorned Boyle's defense, and the jury remained unconvinced, dismissing his claims. After 31 hours of deliberation, the 12-person jury found Boyle guilty of Kinsella's murder, but cleared him of involvement in Massey's due to insufficient evidence. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 33 years. Fellows, however, was convicted on both counts and received an identical sentence, but without the chance for parole, an exceptionally rare penalty in Great Britain, ensuring he would spend his life behind bars. During sentencing, Fellows displayed a smirk as he was led away, reportedly making a threatening gesture toward Boyle.
Kenneth Noye's life story is one of transformation, from a seemingly ordinary upbringing in post-war London to a figure deeply embedded in the British criminal underworld. His journey, marked by involvement in major heists, law enforcement confrontations, and a high-profile murder, has left an indelible mark on the criminal justice system in the UK. His saga spans several decades, involving some of the most audacious criminal acts of the late 20th century, and reflects both the complex dynamics of organized crime and the challenges in bringing such figures to justice. Born on May 24, 1947, Kenneth Noye was raised in Bexley Heath, a South London suburb, to a working-class family. His father was a postman, and his early life mirrored the experience of many post-war families. Modest, with an emphasis on perseverance and resilience, Noye's school years were relatively uneventful, marked neither by academic achievement nor by overt signs of rebellion. However, as he moved into his teenage years, he began displaying a fascination with wealth and status, qualities that seemed out of reach in his world. By the 1960s, during a time of cultural upheaval and economic shifts in Britain, Noye began making minor forays into crime, initially dismissed as youthful indiscretions, but slowly growing in sophistication and ambition. These early ventures allowed him to glimpse the potential profits of an alternative lifestyle and set him on a trajectory toward more serious criminal enterprises. While these initial brushes with the law did not hint at the infamy he would later achieve, they helped him understand the practicalities and risks involved, forming a foundation for his later career in organized crime. By the 1970s, Noye was gradually increasing his involvement in various illegal activities, including handling stolen goods and engaging in smuggling operations. He began to build connections with established criminals, gaining a reputation as someone reliable and resourceful. His abilities to organize, transport, and store stolen items earned him respect in the underworld and served as a springboard into more lucrative ventures. His increasing network led him into the company of key figures in organized crime, where he honed his understanding of more complex criminal operations. This period marked a significant turning point in Noye's life, as he transitioned from low-level offenses to more sophisticated crimes, including money laundering and large-scale theft. His growing expertise in the logistics of crime, especially in precious metals and money laundering, would later prove instrumental in his most infamous operation. His aptitude for risk management and his ability to operate in secrecy distinguished him from others in the criminal community, setting the stage for his involvement in the biggest heist of his career. Noye's name became synonymous with British crime after his involvement in the infamous Brink's-Mat robbery on November 26, 1983. On that morning, a gang of 6 robbers infiltrated the Brink's-Mat warehouse at Heathrow Airport. Expecting a smaller cash haul, they stumbled upon a massive fortune: 3 tons of gold bullion worth approximately £26 million. The robbery was meticulously planned and executed with ruthless precision. However, the nature of the heist posed a unique problem: how to offload and disguise such a large amount of stolen gold without arousing suspicion. Noye's role in the operation was crucial. His expertise in precious metals made him the ideal candidate to melt down the gold and disguise it, enabling its entry into legitimate markets. He devised a complex laundering operation, carefully blending the stolen gold with other metals to erase its origin and covertly reintroduce it into the market. This high-stakes laundering scheme, executed through a vast network of contacts, brought Noye substantial wealth and solidified his status as a mastermind in organized crime. However, the scale of the robbery caught the attention of law enforcement, leading to an extensive investigation that spanned years. Detectives began surveilling Noye's home, Hollywood Cottage in Kent, suspecting him of handling the gold. Despite the elaborate precautions he took, suspicions grew around his involvement in the heist, and he was placed under close scrutiny by both local and international law enforcement agencies. The audacity and scope of the Brink's-Mat operation had drawn intense media and police attention, further complicating Noye's efforts to evade capture. As police continued their investigation, the stakes were raised dramatically in January 1985. Detective Constable John Fordham, an undercover officer, was part of a team surveilling Hollywood Cottage when he was discovered on Noye's property. A confrontation erupted, during which Noye fatally stabbed Fordham multiple times. In his defense, Noye claimed he acted in self-defense, asserting that he was unaware that Fordham was a police officer and feared for his life. The trial for Fordham's killing became a media sensation, with Noye portraying himself as a victim of circumstances. Despite the public outcry, the jury ultimately acquitted him on the grounds of self-defense, a verdict that stunned the nation and intensified his notorious reputation. However, Noye's involvement in the Brink's-Mat case continued to haunt him. Although he escaped conviction for Fordham's death, he was later found guilty of handling stolen gold linked to the heist and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. The conviction marked a turning point for Noye, as he faced a lengthy prison sentence that restricted his influence in the criminal world. Nonetheless, his time in prison did not erase his reputation. Instead, it further fueled public fascination and media attention. His release would only serve to deepen the mythos surrounding his life, as he re-emerged, seemingly unrepentant, with wealth and connections intact. After his release from prison in 1994, Kenneth Noye returned to a life of opulence, backed by his amassed fortune. He maintained a high-profile lifestyle, but took efforts to keep a low profile in terms of criminal activity, likely aware of the watchful eyes of the authorities. However, just 2 years after his release, a violent incident on a slip road off the M25 motorway led to another tragedy and sealed his fate. On May 19, 1996, Noye became involved in a road rage altercation with 21-year-old Stephen Cameron. Witnesses recounted seeing Noye and Cameron engaged in a heated argument that escalated quickly. The confrontation ended with Noye stabbing Cameron fatally, an act witnessed by several bystanders, including Cameron's fiancée, Danielle Cable. Shocked by the public and brutal nature of the attack, the police immediately launched an investigation. Knowing the severity of his actions, Noye fled the country, evading the police in a carefully orchestrated escape that leveraged his network of criminal contacts. His disappearance initiated an international manhunt, and rumors of sightings spanned several countries. For 2 years, he eluded capture, maintaining his freedom with a combination of strategic moves and sheer luck. Eventually, in 1998, Noye was located in Spain, where he was arrested following a coordinated effort by British and Spanish authorities. In 2000, Kenneth Noye stood trial for the murder of Stephen Cameron, facing a public and legal system both eager to see justice served. Once again, Noye claimed self-defense, arguing that he had acted out of fear for his own safety. However, this time, the court found his claims unconvincing. The trial ended with a guilty verdict, and Noye was sentenced to life in prison, a decision that brought some solace to Cameron's family and the British public, who had followed the case closely. The conviction marked the culmination of a long career in crime, overshadowing the years Noye had spent trying to maintain his image as an untouchable figure. The case became emblematic of the thin line between justice and vengeance, as many saw Noye's conviction as a delayed reckoning for years of dodging accountability. His conviction reinforced public perception of him as a violent and unrepentant criminal, and it was a defining moment for law enforcement, which had invested years in pursuing him. During his time in prison, Kenneth Noye kept a low profile, though he remained a figure of public intrigue. Advocates for criminal justice reform and rehabilitation closely observed his case, spurring debates about whether individuals with serious criminal histories could ever truly reform. While he avoided major incidents within the prison system, he remained a divisive figure, with some questioning the sincerity of any rehabilitative claims he made. After serving nearly 20 years of his sentence, Noye was granted parole in 2019. His release sparked widespread debate, with many expressing concerns over whether he posed a risk to society. Upon release, he reportedly chose a quieter life, though his notoriety meant he could never fully escape the public eye. He reconnected with family and sought to establish a new identity, though his criminal history continued to cast a shadow over his life. Kenneth Noye's legacy is a complex blend of notoriety, wealth, and violence, emblematic of a certain era in British criminal history. His story prompts deeper reflections on the nature of crime, the allure of quick wealth, and the societal factors that allow individuals to ascend within the criminal underworld. The debates around his potential for rehabilitation and redemption continue to fuel discussions about the effectiveness of the penal system and the possibilities for change in even the most hardened criminals. Today, Noye remains a polarizing figure, his life serving as a cautionary tale about the costs of unchecked ambition and moral compromise. His criminal journey has become a touchstone in conversations about justice, forgiveness, and the role of societal structures in fostering or hindering redemption. On a seemingly ordinary July morning in 2020, a livestock farmer was going about his daily routine when an unexpected series of events unfolded. Around 5:30 a.m., as he tended to his animals, he heard the distant sound of a vehicle approaching. Moments later, he noticed someone had broken through his farm's gate. Concerned about potential livestock thieves, the farmer alerted his wife, instructing her to lock the doors and contact authorities if she heard a warning shot. Armed with his shotgun, the farmer ventured out to investigate. He discovered the gate's chain and padlock had been forcibly removed, and fresh tire tracks led through his field towards the nearby river. Though the mysterious vehicle had vanished, something caught his eye: a curtain partially submerged in the water. Upon closer inspection, the farmer made a gruesome discovery that would shock the community. Wrapped within the curtain was the body of a young man, later identified as Lee McKnight. The victim, only in his 20s, had suffered extensive, brutal injuries. Investigators would soon reveal that McKnight had been viciously beaten, bound, and callously tossed into the river, while still clinging to life, where he ultimately drowned. This chilling case would uncover a web of deceit, violence, and the dangerous consequences of involvement in the drug trade. As police investigated Lee McKnight's murder, they faced challenges in gathering witness statements. Many individuals were hesitant to come forward. However, McKnight's best friend provided valuable insights into the victim's character and the potential motives behind his death. According to his friend, Lee McKnight was a personable and easygoing individual who had been drawn into the world of street-level drug dealing. The allure of quick money proved irresistible to McKnight, as he could earn more in a week through illegal activities than he could in a month of legitimate work. However, McKnight's involvement in the drug trade came with significant risks and mounting debts. He operated on a credit system, receiving drugs up front and paying his suppliers after selling the product. This arrangement left him vulnerable when rival gangs robbed him of his inventory. Although McKnight managed to avoid physical harm during these encounters, often talking his way out of dangerous situations, he still owed money for the stolen drugs. This outstanding debt put him under constant threat of violence from his suppliers. Despite these close calls and looming dangers, McKnight continued his illicit activities, driven by a desperate need for cash. His friend described the drug world McKnight inhabited as truly perilous, a seedy underworld populated by aggressive predators who were quick to resort to extreme violence to achieve their goals. Interestingly, McKnight's personality seemed at odds with this harsh environment. His friend emphasized that Lee wasn't the type to deliberately provoke conflict or engage in macho posturing. When faced with trouble, McKnight's instinct was always to negotiate and diffuse tensions rather than escalate them. According to his friend, Lee had likely never been in a physical altercation, preferring to use his interpersonal skills to navigate dangerous situations. This portrayal of Lee McKnight paints a complex picture of a man caught between his affable nature and the brutal realities of the drug trade, ultimately leading to his tragic demise. Lee McKnight's life took a dark turn when he found himself in debt to Jame Davidson, a higher-level drug dealer. The two men had known each other for over a decade, with their roles in the drug trade shifting over time. McKnight owed Davidson more than £2,000, a debt that would prove fatal. Davidson, a middleman in the drug trade, dealt cocaine, heroin, and cannabis to lower-level dealers. He typically invested £18,000 to £20,000 for half a kilogram of cocaine every fortnight, collecting payments from his customers to pay his suppliers. However, Davidson himself was facing mounting pressure from his own creditors. In July 2020, after a brief stint in custody, Davidson was approaching a crucial July 24th payment deadline. He owed nearly £10,000 to higher-level criminals who were sending increasingly threatening messages, warning of dire consequences if the debt remained unpaid. The situation escalated when Davidson, accompanied by two intimidating associates armed with a baseball bat and a large spanner, forcibly entered the home of McKnight's friend. Their goal was to send a message to the hiding McKnight, heightening his fear for his safety. Despite his efforts to lay low, McKnight's past caught up with him in the early hours of July 24th. Lured out of hiding by flirtatious messages from his ex-girlfriend, 26-year-old Carroll Edgar, McKnight arrived at a terrace house on Charles Street at 2:40 a.m. Unbeknownst to him, this was a trap set in collaboration with Carroll's drug-addicted mother, Carroll, 47, both regular customers of McKnight's drug business. The moment McKnight entered the house, he was ambushed. Over the next 2 hours, he endured a brutal assault at the hands of Davidson and two recruited accomplices, 26-year-old Aaron Graham and 17-year-old Jamie Lee Roberts. The violence was extreme, leaving McKnight with 9 fractured ribs, a fractured skull, and 36 separate injuries to his head alone. Police investigators later revealed that the house was covered in blood, suggesting McKnight may have been tied to a chair during the attack. His injuries were so severe that he resembled a torture victim. Despite being unconscious and bleeding profusely, McKnight was still alive at this point. Instead of seeking medical help for the gravely injured McKnight, his attackers made the cruel decision to dispose of him. They used Carroll Edgar's Nissan Navara pickup to transport McKnight's battered body. This callous act ultimately sealed McKnight's fate, transforming a brutal assault into a horrific murder. This tragic series of events illustrates the ruthless nature of the drug underworld, where deaths can quickly escalate into life-threatening situations, and the line between dealer and victim can blur in an instant. Lee McKnight's ordeal culminated in a horrific finale. Wrapped in a curtain, his battered body was unceremoniously loaded into Carroll Edgar's Nissan Navara pickup. The assailants drove to the River Caldew, where they callously dragged McKnight from the vehicle and tossed him into the water. It was here, in the cold depths of the river, that Lee McKnight met his end by drowning. The aftermath of this brutal crime was marked by a shocking lack of accountability. All 6 individuals accused in McKnight's death refused to accept responsibility, instead pointing fingers at one another. Jame Davidson claimed that 17-year-old Jamie Lee Roberts, armed with a knuckle duster, had been excessively violent. He alleged that Roberts' father was supposed to take McKnight to the hospital, but instead dumped him in the river. Jamie Lee Roberts, in turn, blamed Davidson for McKnight's death, labeling him a psychopath. Aaron Graham denied any involvement, insisting he wasn't present at Charles Street during the attack and played no part in removing McKnight's body. Coral Edgar, battling addiction and mental health issues, claimed she was too terrified to intervene. She said she only witnessed McKnight being punched near the front door and had curled up in a chair, hiding her face in her hands during the violence. Her mother, Carroll Edgar, denied being at the house during the attack and claimed she never authorized the use of her Nissan Navara. Paul Roberts, Jamie Lee's father, maintained he was merely looking out for his son. He asserted that he had urged the others to get help for McKnight and had even tried to assist the severely injured man himself at Charles Street. While the full truth of Lee McKnight's final moments may never be known, this tragic case starkly illustrates the destructive nature of the illicit drug trade. It exposed the grim realities faced by those caught in its web, like Coral Edgar, who had been addicted since her teens. Spending £40 daily on cocaine and £20 on cannabis, she used drugs to escape the harsh realities of her home life in what she described as a chaotic crack den. The situation was equally dire for Coral's mother, Carroll. Having been evicted from her home following a relationship breakdown, she too had fallen into the grip of a damaging addiction. This case serves as a sobering reminder of the far-reaching and often fatal consequences of drug addiction and the violent criminal underworld that surrounds it. It highlights how quickly situations can escalate in this dangerous environment, leaving devastation in their wake. Following the brutal murder of Lee McKnight, the perpetrators attempted to cover their tracks. The Nissan Navara used to transport McKnight's body was abandoned in a wooded area, left to be discovered later. Paul Roberts, 51, aided his son Jamie Lee Roberts by providing fresh clothes after the attack and disposing of the blood-stained garments. Despite claiming he tried to assist the gravely injured McKnight, Paul Roberts' actions ultimately contributed to the cover-up. The legal proceedings that followed were extensive. After a trial spanning several weeks, all 6 defendants were found guilty of murder, despite their initial denials. The court handed down severe sentences, with the group collectively receiving 119 years in prison. Presiding over the case, the Honourable Mr. Justice Hilliard delivered a damning assessment of the crime. He specifically highlighted the actions of Jamie Davidson and Aaron Graham, stating that both men were aware McKnight was still alive when they made the deliberate decision to drown him. In his judgment, Justice Hilliard characterized the act as both a murder for gain and a murder intended to obstruct the course of justice. The judge's ruling reflected the gravity of the crime, sentencing all 6 individuals to life in prison for their roles in Lee McKnight's murder. This verdict underscored the serious consequences awaiting those who participate in such heinous acts, regardless of their level of involvement. This case serves as a stark reminder of the brutality that can arise from drug-related conflicts and the severe legal repercussions for those involved in such violent crimes. It also highlights the complexities of group dynamics in criminal activities. where attempts to shift blame ultimately failed to sway the court's decision. The lengthy sentences handed down reflect society's condemnation of such acts and the justice system's commitment to holding accountable all those who participate in serious crimes, whether directly or indirectly. The court's sentencing in the Lee McKnight murder case reflected the varying degrees of involvement and culpability of each defendant. The judgments handed down were severe, emphasizing the gravity of the crime and the legal system's intolerance for such brutal acts. Carroll Edgar, who played a role in luring McKnight to his death, received a life sentence with a minimum term of 13.5 years before eligibility for parole. Her mother, Carroll Edgar, whose vehicle was used in the crime, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 13 years. Jame Davidson, identified as a key figure in orchestrating the murder, received the harshest sentence. He was given life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years, reflecting his central role in the crime. Aaron Graham, who participated in the assault and was involved in disposing of McKnight's body in the river, was sentenced to life with a minimum of 26 years behind bars. The court took into account Jamie Lee Roberts' youth at the time of the offense. At 17 years old when the crime was committed, he was still sentenced to life imprisonment, but with a lower minimum term of 16.5 years. Paul Roberts, who assisted in the aftermath of the murder by helping to cover up evidence, received a life sentence with a minimum term of 20.5 years.
In the wee hours of September 25, 2020, Metropolitan Police officers were on patrol along London Road in Norbury, South London. Suddenly, they noticed a man carrying a duffel bag, dressed in a black surgical mask, coat, trousers, and boots. While this attire might not have raised eyebrows under normal circumstances, the context was crucial. With the widespread use of masks due to ongoing events, the sight seemed suspicious, especially considering recent burglaries in the area. Given the circumstances, the police deemed it necessary to investigate whether this individual might be linked to the string of burglaries plaguing the neighborhood. What happened next would shock the whole country. Let's delve into it.
Okay, the reason for that is there's a lot of burglars in this area, and I've just seen you walk. You can just keep your hands out your pockets for now. I'll take it and have a look in a minute. All right. The reason is there's a lot of burglaries in this area. Okay. It's 1:30 in the morning. I don't know who you are. You probably got a totally legitimate excuse. All right. But at the moment you're walking down the road with a duffel bag. All right. Which I believe may have stuff going to equipped to do a burglary. All right. So I'm just going to search you.
This pocket, I've got my ID.
Perfect. Okay, that's fine. Don't put your hands in your pockets. Hey, hello. Don't put your hands in your pockets. Okay. You okay? You're just going to be searched, mate. You're not under arrest. I just need to search you. You okay? All right. Just a bit nervous, yeah?
My parents, please.
Okay. Are they expecting you home? Okay, that's fine. All right, that's fine.
You give me 2 seconds. You give me 2 seconds. Do you want me to hold that? It's alright. You're not in trouble. You're not in trouble. So my colleagues just explained. He was just going to search you, see if you've got anything, and then you're going to be gone. This is all being recorded on body worn camera, okay? You're not in trouble. My colleagues just said a few of the grounds, and he was just going to search you, and you're free to go.
Okay.
I'm entitled to a copy of the slip. Okay?
I'm going to confess, okay?
Yep.
In that bag is non-medical cannabis.
Meet Louis DeZoya, then a 23-year-old individual. While his exact activities on the night in question remain somewhat unclear, it's important to clarify that he wasn't involved in any burglary. One prevailing theory suggests that he was en route to his parents' house, but not for an ordinary visit, as you'll soon discover. Louis had been grappling with a cannabis addiction for approximately 4 years by this point, spending an estimated £200 monthly on the substance. This likely explains why he was found with it in his possession. Additionally, Louis had been diagnosed with autism early in life, which could account for his apparent nervousness during interactions with the police. Medical reports indicate that he was visibly trembling. His autism significantly influenced his communication and social interactions. However, while it might have contributed to his uneasy demeanor with the officers, It wasn't the primary cause of his distress. Neither was the stress induced by his possession of cannabis.
Okay. How much have you got in there?
I've got maybe 3 or so grams.
Okay. All right. I'm still going to have to search you, all right?
Yeah.
So just pass me your phone and your mask, okay? All my concern is at the moment is if you've got anything on that's going to hurt me or you. Any needles, any razor blades, anything like that. Okay, fine. Because you just told me you've got drugs on you, I'm just going to have to put you in handcuffs while I search you. The reason... What's the matter? So the reason for that is people try and do silly things when we search them. They try and hurt themselves, they try and hurt police officers. All right?
Can you take me into the car, please?
Why? Don't resist. Listen to me very carefully.
I know.
Don't resist.
Okay, we'll put you in the car, but put the handcuffs in first, yeah?
Okay.
Is it someone's watching us? Or...
No, take the bag, please. Thank you.
Why do you want us to sit you in the car?
Just worried, please.
Why? Why are you worried?
Just...
You think your parents might see?
No.
Right, get in the car, mate. Control, can I create a CAD for a stop of a person on London Road, junction with Pollard's Hill North, please? Don't put your hands in your pockets. Don't do that again. Do you understand? Do you understand? That's the 3rd time you've done that and I've told you not to. Next time, listen to me, next time you're going to be handcuffed to the back. Alright? 3 times I've asked you. You speak perfectly good English. Stop doing it.
We don't know if you're reaching for a knife, we don't know what you're reaching in for your pocket.
Inside is my... If you open
Received.
you'll see my ID, which has my address.
At the moment, I've tried to do you a favour by taking you off the street. You've not told me why. I'm just saving you a little bit of embarrassment. Now you've reached into... Stop talking. You've now reached into your pockets 3 times and I've told you not to, right? You've now told me you've got drugs on you when I thought you might have had some sort of tool on you to burgle someone's house. So now I'm going to search you stood right here, all right? Because I don't know what else you've got on you, and I think there's more to this story than you're letting on, despite having drugs on you, all right? Okay, so I asked you earlier. I'm not too sure what the answer was. Have you got anything on you like sharp that can hurt me or you?
No.
No?
See what it is, it's not real.
I believe we might do some paperwork. Stop. How many canisters?
Yeah. Canisters.
Oh.
Right, at the moment, I'm
Right.
placing you under arrest
Okay.
for possession of what I believe to be bullets. All right. Could I have van and cell space for 1 male adult arrested for possession of what I believe to be bullets on London Road, junction with Pollard's Hill North? How about 1567. Okay, thanks. Needs to search the back of him.
A1, you've got South Scarlet Windmiller.
Just say receive for me.
Yeah, received.
Yeah, received.
Just hold his jacket up for me.
We're changing to handcuffs to rear.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You got 1 pair of trousers on?
I have a second pair of thermals.
Right, okay. Okay, I'm just going to search your inside leg. Spread your legs slightly for me, thank you. Where'd you get the boots from? Yeah, all good.
Mind your hands, darling, I'm going to close this door, alright?
Do you want me to stay with you?
No, it's fine. Possession of a firearm, aka a bag of what look like bullets. Possession of intent to supply, Class B.
Who's the other unit that's coming
So you probably don't need further search.
Yes, 100%.
Right, just tip up this and wind them down, but don't take the cuffs off.
Yeah, it's fine.
Stand up, mate.
He's been a bit...
Go on.
not
I
understanding.
think this is it.
I understand, stand up.
So please leave.
What?
Please leave. I think I'm going to pass on.
Okay, listen to me.
I don't think you are, mate.
My name's Matt, I'm the custody officer, right? I'm in charge. I'm not involved in the investigation. You've been arrested on suspicion of possession of bullets, ammunition and possession of intent to supply.
Class B.
Class B, anything else?
That's it.
Alright, your detention's not been authorised yet, but I can authorise a search of you under section 54 of PACE. Stand up. Mate, you're good enough to...
Following his detention at Croydon Custody Center in South London, Lewis managed to access a Colt antique revolver he had concealed in a holster beneath his coat and proceeded to shoot Custody Sergeant Matt Ratana. Despite undergoing a thorough search, the police somehow overlooked the nearly foot-long firearm hidden on his person, enabling Louis to carry out the attack. In a matter of seconds, Louis fired 4 shots at Sergeant Ratana. The initial shot struck him directly in the chest, piercing his heart. Despite officers immediately intervening and restraining Louis, he continued to discharge the weapon. A second bullet struck Sergeant Ratana in the leg, while the third lodged into the cell wall, and the final ricocheted off the floor, striking Louis in the neck. Sergeant Ratana was left critically wounded. Additional officers rushed into the cell and subdued Louis with tasers amid a chaotic scene. He was subsequently removed from the cell, leaving a trail of blood behind. Despite the efforts of officers to stabilize both men until paramedics arrived, they were in critical condition upon their arrival. While both initially survived, Sergeant Ratana tragically succumbed to his injuries 2 hours later in the hospital, whereas Lewis underwent life-saving surgery, ultimately surviving. However, he remained in a coma for several months following the procedure. Louis suffered a stroke as a result of the shooting, leaving him with significant brain damage and partial paralysis. Despite his condition, the Crown Prosecution Service sought to pursue murder charges against him. 9 months after the incident, Louis' lawyers argued that his brain damage rendered him unfit to stand trial before a jury. Nevertheless, the presiding judge disagreed, considering Louis' limited but present ability to communicate using a whiteboard and short phrases. With this in mind, the judge approved proceeding with the trial. Despite Louis' impaired condition, the trial was deemed feasible given his basic communication abilities and understanding of questions presented to him. In June of 2023, Louis de Zoysa faced trial for the murder of Matt Ratana. The motive behind Louis' decision to carry a firearm that night remained unclear. However, law enforcement and the Crown Prosecution Service speculated that he intended to either seriously harm or murder his father. Although no charges related to harming his father were filed, this theory gained traction due to Lewis's turbulent relationship with his father. Lewis recounted to the jury, through communication techniques with his lawyer, his experiences of witnessing his father's abuse toward his mother and his own physical mistreatment by his father over trivial matters during his childhood. Police records indicated previous altercations between Lewis and his father, including a 2019 incident where Lewis kicked his father off a bike for being too loud. During the trial, it was revealed that Lewis legally acquired the antique firearm through an online auction site in 2020, citing concerns about potential food shortages during the pandemic as his reason for purchase. However, psychologists testified that Lewis had begun carrying the gun months prior to the shooting for self-defense, claiming he had been robbed during a drug transaction gone awry. Lewis resided in Banstead, approximately 10 miles away from where he encountered the police, after leaving his parents' home upon dropping out of college and securing employment with the HMRC. Leveraging his engineering background, Louis crafted functional bullets in his garage at his flat, which he ultimately used to fatally shoot Matt Ratana. During the trial, Lewis's defense argued that he never intended to kill anyone that day, asserting that his actions were influenced by an autistic meltdown triggered by a lack of personal space, thereby diminishing his responsibility. However, the jury rejected this defense, and Lewis was convicted on all charges, receiving a life sentence with a minimum term to be served before eligibility for parole, ensuring he will remain incarcerated indefinitely.
Louis de Zoysa, at 1:26 in the morning on the 25th of September 2020, you shot dead Sergeant Matt Ratana. He was the custody sergeant at Croydon Police Station. He had devoted his life to public service. He put himself in the way of danger to protect the public and to protect and safeguard those who came into custody. You have robbed Sue Bushby of their future life together, Diane Peachy of her stepson, Luke Ratana of his father, and Jessica Williams and James Young of their brother. They are all rightly immensely proud of the man you killed. They recognise that you bear the sole responsibility for his murder. They say in their victim impact statements that for the officers who were on duty that night, they have nothing but support, sympathy, admiration and respect. You said that you had an autistic meltdown. You said that you had diminished responsibility. The jury disagreed. The jury found you guilty of murder. The sentence for murder is set by law. It is life imprisonment. So I sentence you to life imprisonment. I have a great deal of medical evidence about your condition, and I have been given very great assistance from your lawyers. I have all the information that is necessary to pass sentence. The law requires the court to decide whether to set a minimum term order or a whole life order. A minimum term order means that you can be considered for release after the minimum term. A whole life order means that you remain in custody for the rest of your life. The aggravating factors, in my judgment, outweigh the mitigating factors. The aggravating effect of your use of a gun and the planning and premeditation outweigh the mitigating effects of your personal mitigation, including the impact of custody. There is therefore no justification to depart from the starting point of a whole life order. That is what Parliament has decided should normally apply as a starting point to the murder of a police officer in the execution of their duty. The seriousness of the offence means that a minimum term order is not justified. A whole life order must be imposed. Louis de Zoysa, I sentence you to imprisonment for life. I impose a whole life order. That means you will remain in custody for the rest of your life. You may now be taken from the dock.
At 16, he made his debut in court, foreshadowing a trajectory toward notoriety in gangland. Over the following 2 decades, his criminal odyssey unfolded with a harrowing narrative of brutality and aggression, driven by an insatiable ego and a relentless quest for validation within the upper echelons of the Kinahan cartel. Freddie Thompson emerges as one of Ireland's most infamous criminals, implicated in orchestrating 14 murders, prompting an exploration into his astonishing rise from the streets of Dublin's South Inner City to one of Irish organized crime's most feared figures. Freddie's upbringing centered on using physical dominance to establish control, shaping him into a notorious bully willing to intimidate others. Despite briefly finding belonging in his local boxing club, he drifted from academic pursuits, delving into both lawful and unlawful money-making ventures, transitioning from selling newspapers to engaging in theft. His involvement in petty crime and disruptive behavior drew the attention of law enforcement, who recognized his potential to rise within the criminal underworld, influenced by infamous figures like Martin the General Cahill and Martin the Viper Foley. Despite his Dublin 8 roots, Freddie was drawn to a new social circle, particularly outsiders in Crumlin, where he joined a burgeoning drug gang at 14 under the tutelage of notorious criminals like John Gilligan, Brian Radigan, and Declan Gavin, filling the void left by Gilligan's dismantled operation following journalist Veronica Guerin's murder in 1996. Let's delve into it. What initially began as a close-knit group of teenage friends dabbling in minor criminal activities swiftly transformed into the primary drug distribution network in South Dublin. By age 19, Freddie had risen from street-level dealing to a pivotal distributor, supplying narcotics to younger associates and enforcing his authority through acts of violence, including stabbings. Tensions between Freddie and Brian Radigan led to their separation into separate factions, with Freddie aligning himself with Declan Gavin and introducing Paddy Doyle, a deceased gangland figure, into their circle. However, a significant Garda raid in 2000, followed by Gavin's swift release, fueled suspicions and ultimately ignited the Crumlin-Drimnagh feud, leading to Gavin's murder by Radigan in 2001, prompting Freddie to seize the opportunity and emerge as the new leader of the Crumlin gang. After his friend's tragic demise, Freddie vowed to seek revenge, triggering a series of violent events that seemed to haunt him relentlessly. Declan Gavin became the feud's first casualty, marking the beginning of 15 more fatalities over the next decade. 6 months later, Brian Radigan, consumed by paranoia, was shot while intoxicated, leaving Freddie to target Radigan's younger brother, Joey, indicating a disturbing shift where adversaries targeted the loved ones of their rivals. Amidst the escalating violence, Warren emerged as a hired gun connected to Freddie and Paddy Doyle, while Radigan faced incarceration for heroin possession and looming murder charges. However, Radigan orchestrated a retaliatory hit on Warren in 2004, sparking further violence and solidifying Freddie's fearsome reputation as a relentless terror in Dublin's south inner city, resulting in a staggering death toll of 16 young men in the spiraling cycle of retaliatory killings, stabbings, assaults, and explosive attacks between the factions. Despite the turmoil of the feud, Freddie thrived amidst the chaos, ascending to prominence as a senior figure in organized crime. In 2006, his venture to Rotterdam for a drug shipment resulted in his arrest on weapons and cocaine charges, but luck favored him when the case was dismissed, granting him freedom. This episode showcased Freddie's ability to navigate both street warfare in Dublin and build a significant narcotics empire. Upon his return, he forged an alliance with the McCarthy-Dundon gang in Limerick, further solidifying his sway in the criminal underworld. As leader of the Crumlin faction, Freddie faced immense pressure amid constant scrutiny and threats from rivals and law enforcement, resorting to extreme measures like disguising himself and wearing a bulletproof vest. Paradoxically, his involvement in organized crime intensified his propensity for violence. Meanwhile, his childhood friend Daniel Kinahan followed his father's path, establishing an international crime syndicate based in Spain. Freddie's activities spanned Ireland, the UK, and Spain, where he associated with cousins Liam and David Byrne, Paddy Doyle, friend Gary Hutch, and the Kinahan brothers, Daniel and Christy. However, his life took a dangerous turn in 2007 when he became a target of Declan Duffy from the Irish National Liberation Army. Fleeing to Spain for safety, he sought refuge with the Kinahan cartel, ultimately betraying Paddy Doyle to prove his allegiance. Meanwhile, Doyle's involvement in gangland conflicts led to his demise in February 2008, orchestrated by Freddie and Gary Hutch, resulting in their significant promotions within the Kinahan cartel. By 2010, Freddie had firmly rooted himself in Spain, solidifying his position within the Kinahan mob and earning recognition alongside Gary as trusted confidants of Daniel Kinahan. Under his leadership, business flourished, particularly in procuring and distributing weapons and narcotics from North Africa, expanding their influence across Spain and Europe. However, their operations came under scrutiny in May 2010 during a significant drug shipment overseen by Freddie and Gary in Amsterdam, leading to a cross-border law enforcement operation targeting the Kinahan organization in Spain, resulting in the arrest of nearly 30 individuals. Despite evading capture, Freddie's deep involvement with the cartel was exposed. In the aftermath, with Kinahan's key figures released from prison, Daniel Kinahan embarked on an ambitious agenda to amass wealth through the drug trade and venture into boxing promotion on a global scale. Meanwhile, Freddie continued to shuttle between Holland, Spain, the UK, and Ireland, orchestrating substantial drug and arms deals while orchestrating numerous feud-related murders back in Ireland, including the killing of Gerard Eglinton. In 2014, Freddie faced legal issues in Amsterdam, leading to his extradition to Ireland and subsequent sentencing to 20 months for violent disorder charges. His incarceration set off a chain of events culminating in the infamous Regency Hotel shooting in February 2016, marking the beginning of the cartel's decline. Amidst the escalating Kinahan-Hutch feud, triggered by Gary Hutch's murder, tensions peaked with the attempted assassination of Daniel Kinahan during the Regency Hotel incident, resulting in the fatal shooting of Freddie's cousin David Byrne. At Byrne's funeral, Freddie publicly aligned himself with Daniel Kinahan, indicating his allegiance and role in the conflict against the Hutch faction. Yet the tide shifted with the murder of David Douglas in July 2016, signaling Freddie's impending downfall. Douglas became a target of the Kinahans following a failed assassination attempt at the Red Cow Hotel in late 2015, allegedly implicated in targeting Kinahan associates Liam Rowe and Liam Byrne. Despite lacking evidence, the Kinahans marked him for death, resulting in his tragic murder at his wife's store in front of his daughter. Freddie emerged as the mastermind behind Douglas's killing, orchestrating the hit team's recruitment and actively participating in its execution, evidenced by surveillance footage capturing his presence near the scene and DNA found in one of the vehicles used during the murder. Despite his attempt to avoid direct involvement in the killing, Freddie's deep implication in the crime ultimately led to his downfall amidst the Garda investigation. The motive behind Freddie's deep involvement in a violent act remains uncertain, given his senior position within the cartel and significant wealth, as high-ranking members typically avoid direct criminal activities. It's possible that Freddie's hubris led him to believe he was untouchable in Dublin, or that he aimed to impress the cartel by orchestrating a murder, showcasing his readiness to confront rivals. Despite his reputation as a formidable enforcer, his reckless actions led to a life sentence in August 2018, hinting at a potential demotion within the Kinahan organization. Recently, Freddie Thompson has faced trial for alleged threats to kill and assault, presented by Detective Garda Padraic Ryan at Portlaoise District Court, and forwarded for trial in connection to the alleged offenses. The judge has ruled for the accused to stand trial at Portlaoise Circuit Court on June 11th for alleged assault and threat to kill incidents at Portlaoise Prison on November 17th, 2022, and May 18th of the same year. The accused, Mr. Thompson, has yet to enter a plea, but the Director of Public Prosecutions has consented to their trial. Judge Andrews issued an alibi warning to Mr. Thompson, reminding him of the deadline to provide evidence, and granted a Section 56 order for him to remain in custody, following his previous representation at Portlaoise District Court. During the earlier hearing, Detective Garda Padraic Ryan of Portlaoise Garda Station informed the court that Mr. Thompson, formerly residing in South Dublin but currently housed at Midlands Prison in County Laois, was charged with 1 count of threatening to kill and 1 count of assault causing harm within Portlaoise Prison on November 17th of the previous year.
It was just after midnight on February 12, 2022, when the 999 emergency operator answered a call that would shake a community. The young man's voice was frantic, breath ragged and shaky. "They're trying to ram us off the road. I'm going to die," he gasped. The operator's calm voice tried to keep him focused, asking for location and details, but the line was filled with the terrifying sound of screeching tires and the thundering roar of engines closing in. "Please stay on the line," the operator urged, but seconds later, the line went dead, replaced by a deafening crash and an explosion. The night sky lit up with an orange inferno, swallowing 2 young lives in a blaze of tragedy. What followed was a complex and heartbreaking story of ambition, betrayal, and revenge. One that involved social media fame, family secrets, and a plan that went fatally wrong. Mahek Bukhari, a 22-year-old from Leicester, had become a well-known figure on TikTok and Instagram. With more than 120,000 followers, she was a rising influencer. Her videos showcased stylish fashion, makeup tutorials, trendy dances, and snippets of her seemingly perfect life. Her fans adored her relatable charm and confident persona. Often featured alongside her was her mother, Ansreen Bukhari, 45, who appeared as the loving, supportive parent and close friend. The two cultivated an image of warmth and unity, posting videos of shared laughter, celebratory moments, and heartfelt conversations. But behind this glossy facade, there was tension and darkness. The sparkling online world masked a family grappling with secrets that would soon unravel with devastating consequences. Ansreen Bukhari had lived a quiet life before Mahek's online fame, dedicated to her family and her marriage. However, the world of social media introduced her to new people and experiences. One such connection was with an 18-year-old man named Saqib Hussain. Their relationship began discreetly, but soon grew into a 3-year affair. Saqib was charming and attentive, providing Ansreen with a sense of excitement and escape from the routines of her life. Yet, as the relationship deepened, the risks increased. Ansreen struggled with guilt and fear, trying to keep the secret from Mahek and her husband. When she finally decided to end things in early 2022, she hoped to put the past behind her. But Saqib was not ready to let go. Feeling betrayed, he demanded financial compensation, claiming he had spent thousands supporting Ansreen during their time together. When she refused, he threatened to expose the affair publicly, sending explicit photos and videos to her family and friends. This blackmail was terrifying for Ansreen. The possibility of scandal threatened to ruin the family's reputation and shatter Mahek's burgeoning career. Desperate and scared, Ansreen confided in Mahek. For the first time, the daughter saw a side of her mother she had never known, a woman cornered by secrets and threats. Together, Mahek and Ansreen hatched a plan to confront Saqib and retrieve the compromising material before it could destroy them. The meeting place was arranged, a Tesco car park in Hamilton, Leicester, on the night of February 11, 2022. They did not come alone. Several friends and acquaintances joined them, including Natasha Akar, who lent her blue Seat Leon, and 2 men, Rick and Karwan, who arrived in a sleek gray Audi TT. 8 people in total gathered that night, some wearing balaclavas and others armed. Their goal was intimidation, to scare Saqib into handing over the damaging evidence and end the blackmail for good. When Saqib arrived with his cousin and close friend, Hashim Ijazuddin, a 21-year-old university student known for his kind heart, the scene quickly turned hostile. The two pulled into the car park, only to be confronted by the masked group. Fearing for their safety, Hashim immediately reversed the car, trying to escape the trap. Saqib, desperate and terrified, dialed 999, reporting the attack and the attempt to force them off the road. This confrontation escalated rapidly into a dangerous high-speed chase through Leicester's streets. The Audi TT and Seat Leon roared after the silver Skoda Fabia carrying Saqib and Hashim, engines howling as speed soared toward 100 miles per hour. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, but the attackers were relentless. Saqib's voice, caught on the emergency call, was filled with dread and disbelief. "They're trying to kill me. They're ramming us off the road," he cried out. Inside the Skoda, panic overtook the young men. The roads blurred past as they fought to survive an assault they never anticipated. At the Six Hills Junction on the A46, tragedy struck. The Audi driver rammed the Skoda so violently it spun out of control, crashing into a tree with a force that shattered the car's frame. The impact ruptured the fuel tank, igniting a massive fire that engulfed the vehicle within moments. Both Saqib and Hashim were trapped, unable to escape the burning wreckage. The attackers sped away, leaving behind a scene of devastation and grief. Police arrived swiftly, treating the crash as a deliberate act rather than an accident. Investigators pieced together the events from CCTV footage, eyewitness reports, and the chilling 999 call. Digital evidence revealed the coordination behind the attack. Phone records, text messages, and social media activity traced the movements of the group and identified several participants. the shocking involvement of Mahek and Ansreen Bukhari made headlines, exposing a dark intersection of social media fame and real-world violence. Both Mahek and Ansreen were arrested and questioned. Initially, they denied being in Leicester that night, claiming they were elsewhere. However, phone data and surveillance footage contradicted their stories. Under mounting evidence, Mahek admitted to being at the car park but insisted she never intended harm, only to intimidate Saqib and retrieve the compromising material. The other participants faced varying charges, but the investigation focused on those behind the wheel during the fatal collision. Leicester Crown Court convened to hear the case, which captured national attention. The trial lasted 3 months, examining the intertwined stories of love, deceit, and deadly decisions. Prosecutors laid out the sequence of events, painting a picture of premeditated violence fueled by fear and revenge. They played Saqib's final 999 call, a haunting testament to a desperate cry for help. Mahek testified, admitting to misleading police but denying any role in causing the deaths. Her lawyer argued the plan was only to recover the blackmail material, not to murder. Despite her testimony, the evidence of the attack's violent nature and the presence of weapons left little doubt of her complicity. After hours of deliberation, the jury found Mahek and Ansreen guilty of murder. The men who drove the vehicles responsible for the crash were also convicted. Judge Timothy Spencer Casey condemned the reckless pursuit of online fame that contributed to the tragedy and handed down life sentences with substantial minimum terms: 31 years and 8 months for Mahek, and 26 years and 9 months for Ansreen. Victim impact statements brought the courtroom to tears. Hashim's father spoke of an unfillable void, describing his son as kind, generous, and full of promise. Family and friends of Saqib and Hashim mourned 2 young lives cut short, caught in a violent conflict born of fear and deception. The case ignited debate about the perilous pursuit of online perfection and validation. Experts warned of the dangers in blurring the lines between virtual personas and real-life consequences. Mahek's downfall became a cautionary tale, a reminder that beneath the glitter of social media lies a fragile, often vulnerable human reality. The tragic deaths of Saqib Hussain and Hashim Ijazuddin underline a bitter truth. Social media's shine can mask profound pain and lead to devastating choices. Mahek and Ansreen Bukhari's story reveals how fear, secrecy, and the hunger for fame can destroy lives. As we remember Saqib and Hashim, we must also reflect on the true cost of chasing an illusion, and honor their memory by striving for honesty, empathy, and justice in both virtual and real worlds.
Alan Wilson, a name that has become synonymous with Ireland's criminal underworld, has carved a notorious path through the country's illicit activities. Known for his volatile temperament and earning the moniker the Madman, Wilson's criminal career spans over a decade, involving a range of serious offences that have repeatedly brought him into conflict with the law. Wilson's entry into the world of organised crime is shrouded in mystery, but he quickly gained a reputation for his willingness to engage in violent acts. His association with the Kinahan cartel, one of Ireland's most prominent criminal organisations, placed him at the centre of several high-profile incidents. The nephew of Martin the General Cahill, another infamous Irish criminal, Wilson seemed destined for a life on the wrong side of the law. His familial connections in the criminal world likely provided him with early opportunities and connections that he would later leverage in his illicit activities. Wilson's name became particularly prominent during the Kinahan-Hutch feud, a violent conflict that erupted between 2 rival criminal organisations in Dublin. This feud, which began in 2015, has claimed numerous lives and brought unprecedented levels of gang violence to the streets of Ireland's capital. During this period, Wilson was allegedly involved in several high-profile incidents, demonstrating the brutal nature of the ongoing gang war. One particularly chilling allegation suggests that Wilson once threatened to shoot a baby during the height of the feud, an act that, if true, underscores the extreme brutality that characterized this conflict. One of Wilson's most significant legal cases stemmed from a shooting outside the Players' Lounge pub in Fairview, Dublin, in July 2010. The incident resulted in 3 innocent bystanders being shot and seriously injured, with 2 of the victims sustaining permanent injuries and 1 suffering severe brain damage. Although not initially charged, Wilson was later implicated in this crime. The breakthrough came during the investigation of a separate case in 2017, where Wilson was recorded boasting about his involvement in the Players' Lounge shooting. He was overheard telling an associate, "I had done that job," when referring to the 2010 gun attack. In 2019, Wilson was brought to court for his role in the Players' Lounge shooting. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy to murder and firearms offenses, admitting to procuring weapons and vehicles used in the attack. Wilson claimed he was acting under orders from a dissident Republican group led by the late IRA member, Sean, the Smuggler, Hunt. The court sentenced him to 10 years imprisonment for his involvement in this conspiracy. The charges of attempted murder of the 3 men were dropped as part of the plea agreement. This case highlighted the often indiscriminate nature of gang violence, with innocent bystanders becoming unintended victims of criminal feuds. In 2017, Wilson became entangled in another serious criminal case that would ultimately lead to his downfall. He was charged with conspiring to murder Gary Hanley, an associate of the Hutch family. This plot was part of the ongoing Kinahan-Hutch feud, demonstrating Wilson's continued involvement in gang-related activities. Law enforcement had been monitoring Wilson and his co-conspirators, gathering substantial evidence of their plans. The authorities had secretly bugged Wilson's car, recording crucial conversations that would later be used as evidence against him. The plot was foiled when armed officers intercepted a Volkswagen Caddy van just 500 yards from Hanley's home on the night of the planned attack. 2 of Wilson's associates, Joseph Kelly and Luke Wilson, Alan's cousin, were found with a loaded semi-automatic pistol, caught in the act of attempting to carry out the hit. Wilson was recorded giving detailed instructions about destroying vehicles and discussing methods for carrying out the murder. This evidence played a crucial role in his conviction. He received a 6-year prison sentence for his part in this conspiracy, backdated to November 2017, when he was taken into custody. One of the most high-profile cases involving Wilson was his trial for the murder of Marioara Rostas, an 18-year-old Romanian woman who disappeared from Dublin city centre in January 2008. The young woman had been begging on the street when she was last seen getting into a car. Rostas made a panicked phone call to her brother the day after her disappearance, saying she was being held against her will and sexually assaulted. She was never heard from again. 4 years later, in 2012, her body was discovered in a shallow grave in Kipure Forest, County Wicklow. She had been shot 4 times in the head. The case against Wilson relied heavily on testimony from a protected witness, his former associate Fergus O'Hanlon. O'Hanlon provided a harrowing account of Rostas' final days. However, after a 5-week trial in 2014, Wilson was found not guilty. The judge had instructed the jury to be cautious about convicting based on uncorroborated evidence from a witness who had received benefits from the Witness Protection Program. This case highlighted the challenges faced by prosecutors in securing convictions in complex criminal cases, particularly those involving organized crime where witnesses may be reluctant to come forward or may have questionable motives. In June 2009, Wilson and an accomplice, David Crowley, were involved in a violent home invasion in Blanchardstown. They attacked a man named David O'Brien with a meat cleaver. Despite both men pleading not guilty and complications with witness testimony, they were convicted in 2013. The case faced several challenges, including the fact that the victim, O'Brien, did not give evidence as he never made a statement to the guards. Additionally, other potential witnesses, including the victim's former partner, Lisa Murray, and her father, were treated as hostile witnesses after denying sworn statements in which they had identified the attackers. Despite these obstacles, Wilson received a 7-year sentence for this crime, while Crowley was sentenced to 8 years. However, Wilson later won an appeal against this conviction on technical grounds related to the specific offense he was charged with versus what he was questioned about. The Supreme Court allowed for a retrial, but the Director of Public Prosecutions decided not to pursue it, as Wilson had already served most of his sentence with remission. Wilson has been linked to other unsolved crimes throughout his career. He was previously arrested and questioned about the murder of 22-year-old Darren Cogan, who was shot and fatally wounded in a pub in Inchicore on June 25, 2011. Guards believed the murder was a case of mistaken identity. Although Wilson was questioned, he was never charged, and the case remains unsolved. Since his incarceration in 2017, Wilson's time in prison has been marked by conflicts and security concerns. He has claimed that his former associates in the Kinahan cartel have placed a substantial bounty on his head, allegedly offering €100,000 for his murder and €20,000 for a serious assault. Wilson's status as a high-profile and at-risk inmate has led to several transfers between prisons. He was initially held in Mountjoy Prison, but was moved to Midlands Prison after being attacked by other inmates in June 2019. This attack left him with a broken nose and facial lacerations. In 2022, Wilson took legal action against the Irish Prison Service, claiming they failed to protect him from the Kinahan cartel while in custody. This lawsuit highlights the challenges faced by prison authorities in managing high-risk inmates with complex histories of gang affiliations. Wilson's paranoia and volatility have also led to conflicts with prison staff. Reports indicate that he has faced disciplinary sanctions on multiple occasions, primarily for making threats against jail personnel. His behavior behind bars has been described as erratic and threatening, making him a challenging inmate to manage. More recently, Wilson was transferred to the high-security Portlaoise prison following an assault on officers. The incident allegedly occurred when Wilson, known for his unstable behavior, failed to recognize a new group of staff assigned to manage him. This event underscores the ongoing security concerns surrounding Wilson and the resources required to safely incarcerate high-profile gang members. On the night of December 24, 2022, Elle Edwards, a 26-year-old beautician from Wirral, England, lost her life in a tragic, senseless act of violence. Elle, known for her warm heart and infectious personality, had been enjoying a festive evening at the Lighthouse Inn in Wallasey Village with friends, celebrating Christmas Eve. What should have been a night of joy quickly turned into a nightmare as gunshots rang out in the pub's parking lot. At approximately 11:50 p.m., a brutal shooting took place. The intended target was Jake Duffy, a 24-year-old man from Beechwood. Duffy, who had ties to the local criminal underworld, was known for his association with a violent gang. Connor Chapman, a notorious drug dealer and rival to the Beechwood gang, had been involved in an ongoing turf war over control of the drug trade in the area. On that night, Chapman aimed to eliminate Duffy, seeing him as a threat to his illegal operations. However, in a devastating twist of fate, the gunfire intended for Jake Duffy did not hit its mark. Instead, it struck Elle Edwards, an innocent bystander with no connection to the violence surrounding the shooting. She was hit by a bullet while she was standing outside the pub, unaware of the danger unfolding just a few feet away. Despite the best efforts of emergency responders, Elle was tragically pronounced dead at the scene. Her death, a result of a targeted gang attack, sent shockwaves throughout her community, with people reeling in disbelief that a young woman with so much potential had been taken away in such a violent manner. The shooting that claimed Elle Edwards' life was deeply connected to the violent gang conflict between two factions: the Beechwood gang, with which Jake Duffy was associated, and Connor Chapman's gang, which was involved in the distribution and trafficking of drugs across Wirral and Liverpool. The Beechwood gang, based in the Beechwood area of Wirral, had long established itself as a dominant force in the region's illicit drug market. The gang was involved in everything from street-level drug dealing to more sophisticated operations, and they used violence to maintain control over their territories. Jake Duffy, with his hardened connections and role within the Beechwood gang, had become one of the enforcers for the group. He had earned a reputation for his involvement in violent activities and had become a target of rival factions seeking to undermine the Beechwood gang's power. On the other side was Connor Chapman, a 23-year-old drug dealer who had built his own criminal empire. Chapman was known for his ruthless tactics and his determination to expand his drug network. Over the years, Chapman's operations had come into direct conflict with the Beechwood gang, particularly over control of local drug routes. This rivalry had become increasingly violent, with multiple incidents of retaliation and threats. The tensions between the two groups had escalated over time, with each gang attempting to assert dominance. The shooting outside the Lighthouse Inn was the culmination of this ongoing conflict, where Chapman sought to take out one of the Beechwood gang's key players, Jake Duffy. However, in the chaotic exchange of gunfire, Elle, an innocent young woman who had nothing to do with the gangs or their criminal activities, became the tragic collateral damage. Connor Chapman, the 23-year-old drug dealer from Wirral, was the man responsible for firing the fatal shots. Chapman was no stranger to the criminal justice system and was already known to law enforcement for his involvement in drug trafficking and other violent crimes. His desire to expand his influence in the local drug trade had led to violent confrontations with rival gangs, and he had a particular disdain for Jake Duffy and the Beechwood gang. Chapman had a well-established reputation for his violent behavior, using fear and intimidation as tools to maintain control over his business. His decision to target Duffy was rooted in a desire to eliminate a key figure in the Beechwood gang, and thus diminish the gang's power in the area. Chapman was aware that Duffy's influence was substantial, and his removal would provide an opening for Chapman to expand his territory. Jake Duffy, on the other hand, was deeply embedded within the Beechwood gang. A 24-year-old man from Beechwood, Duffy had been involved in the criminal world for years and had a history of violent offenses, including drug-related crimes. Duffy's role within the Beechwood gang had made him a key player in the local drug scene, and he had become a target for Chapman and other rival factions. The gang conflict was not just a simple rivalry, it was a life-and-death struggle for control over a lucrative, illegal market. Both Chapman and Duffy were willing to resort to extreme violence to defend their positions, with little regard for the consequences on the lives of innocent people. The night of the shooting, Chapman arrived at the Lighthouse Inn armed with a gun, intending to eliminate Duffy. However, despite his best efforts to kill Duffy, the gunfire missed its intended target. Instead, the bullet struck Elle Edwards, who was standing outside with friends. The tragedy marked the senseless loss of a life that had no place in the violent world of gang warfare. Following Ella's tragic death, Merseyside police launched a full-scale investigation to find those responsible for the shooting. Detectives quickly established that the violence had been gang-related, specifically tied to the ongoing rivalry between the Beechwood gang and Chapman's drug network. They worked tirelessly to uncover the events leading up to the shooting and identify the perpetrators. The investigation revealed that Connor Chapman had been actively targeting Jake Duffy as part of his campaign to eliminate rival gang members. Surveillance footage from the pub and witness testimonies helped police to piece together the events of that fateful night. Witnesses described Chapman's actions and the chaotic scene that unfolded as he opened fire on Duffy. But despite the violence, Duffy managed to escape the scene unscathed. Tragically, Ella, who was outside the pub enjoying the evening with friends, was caught in the crossfire and was fatally shot. Police tracked down Chapman and arrested him in the days following the incident. During his interrogation, he denied any involvement in the shooting, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. The gun used in the shooting was traced back to him, and multiple witnesses identified him as the shooter. Connor Chapman was charged with murder, attempted murder, and multiple firearms offenses. The trial of Connor Chapman was a long-awaited moment of justice for Ella's family and the local community. In court, the prosecution presented a clear case showing that Chapman had deliberately targeted Jake Duffy, intending to kill him. However, the stray bullets that Chapman fired that night killed Ella instead, an innocent woman with no ties to the criminal world. The tragic irony of the situation was not lost on those who knew Ella, and the courtroom was filled with sorrow as the full scale of the tragedy unfolded. Connor Chapman was found guilty of murder and multiple charges related to the shooting. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 40 years before he could be considered for parole. The conviction brought a sense of justice, but it could never fill the void left by Ella's untimely death. Her family, devastated by the loss, found some solace in knowing that the man responsible for taking her life would face consequences, but their grief remained profound. Elle Edwards' death was a turning point for the local community. Her tragic fate highlighted the deep-rooted issues of gang violence and the far-reaching impact of the criminal drug trade. Local residents were shaken by the brutality of the crime, and people came together to mourn her loss, holding vigils and memorials in her honor. In the wake of the shooting, there were widespread calls for action from both law enforcement and local government officials. The community demanded stronger measures to combat gang violence and prevent young people from being drawn into the world of crime. There were calls for better support systems, more educational opportunities, and initiatives to help young people avoid the lure of gangs and the dangerous world of drug dealing. Ella's family, heartbroken by their loss, also became vocal advocates for change. They worked with local organizations to raise awareness about the dangers of gang violence and to encourage others to take a stand against the criminal activity that had taken their loved one's life. Their efforts focused on ensuring that future generations would not have to face the same kind of tragedy. Elle Edwards' life was cut short in a violent act of gang-related revenge that had nothing to do with her. Her death serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of gang violence and the deadly impact of the drug trade on communities. While justice has been served with the conviction of Connor Chapman, the pain of losing Ella remains with her family, friends, and the entire Wallasey community. Her story is one of many, but it is a story that must be remembered. The tragic loss of Elle Edwards is a call to action to confront gang violence, to protect innocent lives, and to work towards a society where young people are given opportunities for a better future, free from the lure of criminal activity. Elle Edwards' memory lives on as a symbol of the need for change, and a reminder that no life should be lost to senseless violence.
Now, the shooting of Jason Molyneux in Dublin's inner city last night has been described as a callous murder, with Gardaí saying he was lured to his death. The 27-year-old from North William Street was shot 6 times in the chest and stomach after he went to meet someone at James Larkin House Flats complex.
I was very, very shocked. I don't know when it's going to end.
Superintendent Jerry Murphy of Store Street Garda Station addressed the media at the back of the flats this afternoon, and he described the killing of 27-year-old Jason Molyneux as a callous murder. The father of one from nearby North William Street was shot 6 times at around 9:45 last night, just before Gardaí came on the scene. He outlined how witnesses said the suspected gunman was dressed in dark clothing and escaped on foot. He sought information too on a white Renault Kangoo van with a 10D registration found burnt out near the East Link Bridge this morning.
This is a callous murder. This is a murder that has occurred in an area that has been the subject of a number of murders in the past. We need the help of the community to assist us. We are out there on an ongoing basis, but we need the help of the community, and in particular I'm appealing to the community to come forward and help us with this investigation.
On a Friday night in 2008, Anthony Russell, a well-known criminal from North Dublin, was out socializing with friends at the Ardley Inn when 2 men entered the pub causing chaos. One of the men opened fire, specifically targeting Russell, striking him multiple times in the chest. The assailant quickly fled the scene in a silver Nissan Almera, which was later found abandoned in a nearby laneway. Inside the vehicle, a handgun was discovered. Russell was swiftly rushed to the nearby Beaumont Hospital for treatment, but tragically succumbed to his injuries within an hour and a half of the attack. He was a father of 2 and had plans to marry the following month. This was not his first brush with danger, as he had survived a similar gun attack at his home 2 years prior. Russell was associated with a gang led by Christy Griffin, who had recently been sentenced to life in prison for a heinous crime. The gang, notorious for their involvement in criminal activities such as drug trafficking, robberies, and cooperating with the Provisional IRA, was thrown into turmoil after Griffin's arrest. The revelation of Griffin's crimes sparked infighting within the group, leading to a violent feud among criminals from the Sheriff Street area. This feud quickly spiraled out of control, resulting in a series of violent incidents including murders and grenade attacks, causing chaos and devastation in the usually quiet neighborhood. Following Russell's death, the Garda conducted several searches and arrested more than a dozen individuals. Surprisingly, one of those questioned about a murder was a teenager. This was 17-year-old Jason Buda Molyneux, who had quickly become known to the Garda for his involvement in serious organized crime. Buda began his criminal activities at the age of 13, initially engaging in petty offenses. By 17, he was a hired gun, believed to be part of the team responsible for the 2008 killing of Anthony Russell. This was not the first time he was suspected of involvement in a murder. 2 years earlier, at just 15, he was implicated in a plot to kill a rival. During that incident, Buda, wearing a bulletproof vest, jumped out of a car and entered the St. Mary's Mansion's flats complex. Garda suspected he was sent to search for targets amid the ongoing feud in the north of the city. However, the 15-year-old, who was also a notorious joyrider, was caught off guard when he encountered 2 police officers and was eventually arrested for driving a stolen motorbike. Buda quickly became notorious as one of Dublin's most dangerous criminals due to his obsession with weapons. He had an astonishing 120 criminal convictions, including drug possession, knife offenses, and theft-related charges, which earned him a reputation for extreme violence. While he was never formally charged with Russell's murder, he was a prime suspect in 4 other gangland killings in Dublin, such as the assassination of Mad Mickey Devoy in January 2014, the execution-style murder of Micheal Keogh in 2017, and the tragic double murder of Devoy's sister and a friend that same year. Buda had close ties with the Hutch family, especially with Derek Coakley Hutch, who was the nephew of the monk. In 2016, Buda was caught with a stolen motorbike believed to be intended for a gangland hit against the Kinahan mob, with whom the Hutch family was feuding. 2 years later, Derek became the 14th victim of the ongoing feud between the Kinahan and Hutch families on January 20th, 2018. Derek, a 27-year-old father of 2, was ambushed and shot multiple times at close range as he arrived at the Bridgeview halting site. Despite the efforts of emergency services, Derek was pronounced dead at the scene. His funeral was set to take place the following week, with the wake held near Buda's residence on Buckingham Street Upper. Naturally, Buda attended the wake, intending to carry the coffin of his slain friend during the funeral. Little did he realize he would be next in line. After attending the wake, Buda returned home, where he lived with his mother and sister. However, around 8:45 p.m., Buda left, saying he was meeting a friend at nearby James Larkin House. Moments later, a Renault Kangoo van approached, carrying a 2-man hit team. Buda was shot up to 13 times at close range, just a short distance from his house. Despite being officially warned by the Garda, Buda was not wearing his bulletproof vest at the time of the attack. His mother disclosed that he had refrained from going out earlier in the day, due to concerns about people watching their home and keeping track of his movements. Miss Molyneux got worried when attempts to reach her son went unanswered. She left the house to look for him, and as she prepared to leave, she heard a loud bang. Hastening to put on her boots, she moved out to the balcony and saw about 4 flashes coming from the James Larkin flats. In a moment of defiance, she shouted at the suspected gunmen, labeling them as dirty scumbags before rushing to her injured son's side. Upon reaching Buda, she asked him who had shot him, but he remained silent. He was rushed to Mater Hospital, where he was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. The Sphinx handgun used to end Buda's life, a rare firearm in Ireland, was discovered in the burnt-out car after the gruesome act. Despite the heavy presence of Garda leading up to Derek Hutch's funeral, Buda was ruthlessly shot, showcasing the determination of his assailants. Buda's ties to the Hutch family, especially after Derek's death, made him a target in the ongoing Kinahan-Hutch feud. Even while on bail, Buda convened a meeting with his fellow Hutch gang members. highlighting his prominent role in the criminal organization. Authorities suspect that a previous feud unrelated to the current conflict between the Kinahans and the Hutch family may have ultimately led to Buda's tragic demise. Speculation arose that he had been targeted for death following his release from prison, as rival gangs were supposedly seeking vengeance. Authorities had warned Buda multiple times about the immediate danger to his life, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. The prevailing theory regarding the reason for Buda's killing suggests a possible connection to his associations with individuals linked to an attempted assassination of criminal Derek Bottler Devoy. Sadly, instead of Devoy, his blameless sister Antoinette Corbally Devoy and her friend Clinton Shannon, who were also innocent, were fatally shot when two gunmen invaded the home of the mother of six in Ballymun in August 2017, prior to the recent double murder. There was speculation that Buda may have been responsible for the fatal shooting of Bottler's brother, Michael Mad Mickey Devoy, 3 years ago. Michael was tragically killed shortly after serving a brief stint in prison. It is suggested that Buda's murder may have been a form of retaliation for Michael's death. Michael was suspected of shooting at a group of individuals leaving a party at a Dublin pub back in 2013. Although no one was killed in that incident, Kinahan drug dealer Greg Lynch sustained a serious head injury, and 3 innocent bystanders were also hurt. Initially, Lynch accused Bottler Devoy of orchestrating the attack. While the case of Michael Devoy's murder remains unsolved, police believe that individuals associated with the Kinahan-Hutch dispute may have been behind the act, seeking revenge for the harm done to one of their own. Despite suspicions of involvement in Michael's murder and being questioned by the Garda, Buda was ultimately released without any charges being brought against him. However, despite this, Buda continued to be blamed by associates of the Devoy's Ballymun group for the killing, prompting the Garda to consider the possibility of Buda being targeted by this faction. After a thorough investigation, the Garda concluded that Buda was indeed a victim of a planned attack involving multiple individuals working in conjunction with the gunman. Numerous arrests were made in connection to the case, but as of now, no one has been prosecuted for their involvement in Buda's death.
Open the windows. Open the door. Alright lads, keep your hands where you can see him. Just keep your hands where you can see him, pal. Put you in some handcuffs. Yeah, one about that side, just need driver out that side. Yeah, no bother. Just open the door for us, mate, until we confirm your identity. And we'll put you in handcuffs. What's your name, fella? Eh? Joseph. Tom's just getting driver out and all 3 will be secure. Arrest on suspicion of murder, okay? You don't have to say anything. I am in defence, you don't mention my question. Some people you later rely in court, and anything you do say may be given evidence.
29-year-old Joseph Pierce and 41-year-old James Witham were arrested for the murder of 28-year-old Ashley Dale, 23 days after the incident on the Old Swan estate in Liverpool, United Kingdom. The investigation initially seemed challenging, but detectives from the Merseyside police acted swiftly to solve the case, preventing it from becoming Liverpool's latest unsolved murder. Despite living a comfortable life away from crime, Ashley Dale tragically had her door kicked in and faced a hitman's indiscriminate gunfire while watching TV with her dog. Let's delve into it. Let's take a deep dive into this case then and see how 2 best friends turned rivals caused the death of an innocent woman. To begin, we've got to head over to the Glastonbury Festival, a 5-day festival that some of the most famous artists have touched down to perform there. Roughly 200,000 people visit every year, and in 2022, 28-year-old council worker Ashley Dale attended as she had done many times before. That year, she headed down to the festival with her boyfriend Lee Harrison, a known Merseyside organized crime gang member. The pair were also with 2 friends, but only one is relevant to the story: Jordan Thompson, also an organized crime gang member. We'll call this group Group 1. Also in attendance was organized crime gang member Sean Zeiss and his girlfriend Olivia McDowell. Although the pair headed down to Glastonbury by themselves, they were both associated with Group 1, and throughout their time at the festival, they crossed paths with them. We'll call this pair Group 2. Ian Fitzgibbon, Olivia's cousin, and his girlfriend were also in attendance, and just like Group 2, they made their own way down to Glastonbury. Throughout their time at the festival, they crossed paths with Group 1 and 2. Then there's Group 4. This group consists of high-ranking organized crime gang member and arms dealer Niall Barry, James Witham, and a few others that are irrelevant to the story. Niall had connections with everyone in the other groups except for Lee Harrison and Jordan Thompson. However, their friendship hadn't always been distant, especially in 2018 when they were considered best friends and partners in drug trafficking, until a significant theft occurred. Approximately 40,000 pounds worth of cocaine and cannabis vanished from Niall's stash house, allegedly orchestrated by the Hillsiders, a local criminal syndicate. Lee, believed to be associated with them, severed ties with Niall, possibly due to suspicions that Niall had been swindling him. This rift hinted at a looming retaliation, given Niall's prominence in the criminal landscape of Merseyside. After the robbery, years passed without any significant developments. Niall purportedly relocated to North Wales to manage a county line and engage in trading illegal firearms. Despite occasional encounters with Lee upon his return to Liverpool, no confrontation ensued. However, tensions escalated during Glastonbury 2022 when interactions between their respective groups reignited the feud. An altercation between Sean Zeiss and Jordan Thompson over Lee's involvement in the 2018 robbery sparked the conflict further, culminating in Sean's assault and subsequent fallout with his girlfriend, Olivia. The following day, she broke up with him and started a fling with Jordan Thompson at Glastonbury. Niall capitalized on the incident to confront Lee, marking a notable departure from their previous avoidance of conflict, possibly due to their shared social circles maintaining peace until then. After Sean's confrontation with Lee led to his assault, Niall's pursuit of vengeance intensified. Armed and determined, Niall sought out Lee at Glastonbury as recounted by Ian, a witness to their encounter. Despite Niall's threat of violence, no further altercations occurred between the parties involved. Sean, though aware of Olivia's presence with Group 1 post-assault, remained silent. Meanwhile, Lee remained unperturbed by Niall's armed pursuit, opting to enjoy the festival instead. However, on the fourth day, Niall and James Witham's plans were disrupted when they encountered police while en route to Glastonbury, though the reasons for their detour remain undisclosed.
Got on top here for him. We believe they have drugs on you. We're in the vehicle, okay? So we're taking you for a search. I'm piecing up in the front where you bring to these unit, okay? So we can use the cars.
James has got £700 in cash on him, but that's below the threshold. Oh, hello, Mr. Niall.
Yeah, that'll do.
That'll come in. I think that was it, to be fair. Niall, time is 25:02, mate. You're going to be arrested under suspicion of possession of that, okay?
That's not my bag.
It's in your bag with your passport in it, okay?
Yeah, I've just said that to you before. My passport was in his bag.
So you don't have to say anything that may harm defence if you don't mention any questions. Think you later on in the court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence, alright?
That's not my bag.
It's got your passport in it.
Ask him, he grabbed all my stuff before.
Hmm?
Ask him, he grabbed all my stuff before.
Is it just one bag? No, there's two bags.
My bag's the carrier bag, the white bag. With all the clothes in.
You did say straight away that his passport's going to be in his mate's bag.
I did say that, yeah, I did say that. Ask him myself, because I did the
Right. You're under arrest for now, okay?
Till we bottom it out.
It's your bag, is it? Say again? The big blue holder. Yeah. Okay. Say again? There's ketamine in there, is there? Whereabouts is it? You say there's some ketamine in the bag. I didn't find anything.
Yeah, his bag. The blue one?
That one? That's yours? Okay. Right, okay. So, I'm going to arrest you then. on suspicion of possession of this, okay? So you don't have to say anything but may harm your defence. Do not mention any questions, think of it in line report, okay? Anything you do say may be given evidence. Obviously, this is a lock knife, right? So you're under arrest for possession of a bladed article. Where's the ketamine in here then? What? I've searched the bag and I can't find any ketamine. What was it in? It's your driving licence in your little bag.
Yeah.
So it's the other guy, the chap with the baseball cap. He's confirmed it's his bag, and the guy whose passport it was in it is denying it's his bag, saying it's his mate's bag.
Oh well, it's on tape, so.
Yeah. To be fair, I think as soon as, to be fair to Niall, the other bloke, as soon as he's been stopped, he sort of said, like, my passport's in that bag, but nothing else in there is mine.
Oh, okay.
And the other chap's like, yeah, that's my bag.
Oh, okay.
His passport's in it, so I nicked the other one first because I thought it was his.
Yeah, well, he's got a passport.
Yeah, he's got no, it's not mine. The other guy.
With Glastonbury's conclusion, everyone dispersed to resume their routines, except for one individual profoundly affected by the events. The looming threats made during the festival cast a shadow of fear, particularly on Ashley Dale, whose anxiety intensified upon learning of Niall's pursuit of Lee. The constant reminder of potential danger, even if not directly targeting her, consumed her thoughts. Compounding her distress, Niall's direct communication with Lee, promising a visit to their shared home address, exacerbated Ashley's unease, leaving her unable to find solace in the aftermath of Glastonbury, as her texts prove. It's just giving me bad anxiety. I just feel like I'm constantly worrying and something's going to happen. He's being threatened by Niall and all like that. Is he going to end up doing something to Lee? I just couldn't cope with that. Niall is saying he's going to come and do something. He was saying he was going to come down and he never came down. I just think if he's going to do something, would he not give him any warning? I CBA with it. I don't want to have to go to Lee's funeral next, and I just have a bad feeling about everything MOL. Proper stressed out all the time, my nerves are gone. When I'm out in the car with Lee, just feeling like I'm looking over my shoulder all the time.
So I'm so sorry to report that over the course of the weekend at around midnight on the early hours of Sunday morning, police were called to Leinster Road, reported for shooting. At that location we found that the property had been forcefully entered, multiple shots had been fired, and a young lady who we now know to be Ashley Dale had been shot and fatally wounded. And unfortunately, despite the best efforts of Merseyside Police and the North West Ambulance Service, she succumbed to those injuries. We are supporting her family at this incredibly difficult time. Ashley was a lovely young woman with a career in front of her, worked for Knowsley Council and had recently graduated and had a promotion at work. She was in her own home and should have been safe at that time. The people responsible for this attack are subject to our investigation, and we need to do everything we can to identify who they are. They have no place in our society or our communities. They had no regard for Ashley or the law or the community, and I appeal to anyone with any information whatsoever or evidence around this to come forward, contact us directly, Crime Stoppers, or through our major incident portal on the website.
At 11:40 p.m. on August 20th, 2022, a grey Hyundai was captured on CCTV as it approached Ashley Dale's residence on Leinster Road in Liverpool's Old Swan neighbourhood. Upon arrival, two individuals disembarked and proceeded to slash the tyres of Ashley's white Volkswagen T-Roc. Their attempts to lure occupants outside were futile as no one responded. Inside, Ashley remained with her dog, attributing the disturbance to the rain-triggered alarm and refrained from investigating. Almost an hour later, the assailants returned, this time wielding a military-grade Scorpion machine pistol. Bursting into the living room, the gunman confronted Ashley, who fled towards the back garden via the kitchen. Despite her efforts to escape, she was struck once in the abdomen by gunfire. Her dog was also targeted, sustaining injuries. After discharging multiple rounds, the gunman retreated, leaving behind a scene of terror and devastation.
I've just heard a loud noise in the back. I've stood on my back wall and the house immediately to the back of us. There's a lady lying there in shorts and a t-shirt and she's groaning. She's lying in the backyard on her back. She looks like she's struggling.
Please, if there's anyone here, make yourself known! Officers with taser. Back door's open. Is it? Yeah. Chris, you've got taser, want to take the lead, mate? Want to walk through? Unfortunately, I've not had my refresher. Back door is open. Right. Please! Go check the back. What's the report? Yeah, down your back.
Is that last patrol on the road?
Upon police arrival, they encountered Ashley Dale's residence riddled with bullets. Amidst the chaos, officers discovered Ashley's traumatized dog, fortunately unharmed. However, Ashley herself was not as fortunate. Despite emergency efforts, her catastrophic injuries proved fatal. Consequently, a murder investigation commenced, initially posing challenges due to the historical reluctance of Liverpool locals to cooperate with law enforcement. Nevertheless, recent shifts in public cooperation facilitated progress in the case. Shortly after Ashley's death, informants implicated James Witham as the suspected gunman. Interestingly, Ashley wasn't the intended target. Her boyfriend, Lee Harrison, was. Lee's refusal to aid the investigation into his girlfriend's murder contrasted starkly with his reassurances to Ashley's family of his innocence in the matter. Despite Lee Harrison's reluctance to cooperate with the investigation, police found Ashley Dale's own communication devices to be instrumental in uncovering crucial evidence. Text messages and voice notes retrieved from her phone provided a timeline linking back to the 2018 drug robbery, establishing revenge as the motive behind her murder. According to police, James Witham and Joseph Pearce were dispatched to assassinate Lee on orders from Niall Barry and Sean Zeiss, seeking retribution for the robbery and the Glastonbury incident. With all four suspects identified, police moved to make arrests, encountering difficulty as all but Sean fled the area. Sean, apprehended a week later, initially denied involvement, but later expressed disgust at the events and asserted his innocence, opting not to evade authorities. Following the murder, Joseph Pearce and James Witham proceeded to the Mercure Hotel in St. Helens. They spent one night there, indulging in the spa facilities, before checking out on the morning of August 22, 2022. Their activities on the 22nd remain unclear, but in the early hours of the subsequent morning, they seemingly fled to Scotland, likely in an attempt to evade police pursuit. Law enforcement struggled to trace their movements during their time in Scotland. However, by September 13th, authorities received intelligence suggesting their return journey to Liverpool in an Audi Q7. This prompted their imminent arrest.
The door. Alright lads, keep your hands where you can see him. Just keep your hands where you can see him, pal. I'll put you in some handcuffs. Yeah, one about that side, just need driver out that side. Yeah, no bother. Just open door for us, mate, until we confirm your identity. We'll put you in handcuffs. What's your name, fella? Eh? Joseph. I'm just getting driver out and all three will be secure. Arrest on suspicion of murder, okay? You don't have to say anything. I am in defence, you don't mention when questioned. Some future later relying in court, and anything you do say may be given evidence. Understand?
Suspicion of murder. What? Suspicion of murder.
Hello mate, how are you doing?
Just going to put you in cuffs, mate, alright. What's your name, fella?
Francis.
Say that again.
Francis Kelly.
Gary.
Francis.
Gary Francis.
Francis Kelly.
Francis Gary.
Francis
Right.
Kelly.
Carrie.
Kelly.
Kelly, it's alright. My ears, your... Right, we'll walk over here, fella.
I've got the key.
You got anything on you shouldn't? No. Anything in the vehicle that you shouldn't be? Yeah, James? Right, okay, you're under arrest for a suspicion of murder. Alright, you don't have to say anything. The may Army defence, you don't mention one question, something which will let in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Alright? Whatever time was now, yeah, we'll come over here, we'll sit behind my vehicle. He's confirmed that he is, James.
On August 24th, 2022, 3 days post the murder, Niall packed his belongings and departed for the Formby Hall Golf and Spa Resort in Formby, situated approximately an hour away from the Huyton flat. All 4 men faced charges including murder in connection to Ashley Dale, conspiracy to murder Lee Harrison, and conspiracy to possess a prohibited weapon with intent to endanger life. Despite initial denials, they proceeded to trial. Just prior to the trial, James Witham admitted to being the gunman, but claimed it was manslaughter as he didn't intend to shoot Ashley. However, the prosecution rejected his plea, leading to a 7-week trial from October to November 2023. While the other defendants distanced themselves from the murder, James portrayed the shooting as reckless and unintended, expressing remorse for the harm caused. Joseph Pearce claimed no involvement in the incident, asserting he had no part in the events leading up to the shooting, including the Glastonbury altercation and the drug robbery. Sean Zoysa maintained he was at the Huyton flat watching sports and denied any motive for targeting Lee, citing Lee's intervention during the Glastonbury altercation as evidence of their amicable relationship. Niall insisted he was at the flat with others and denied any plan to harm Lee. Despite their defenses, the jury convicted all defendants on all charges.
At 11:40 p.m. on the 20th of August last year, a Hyundai car drove into Leinster Road in Old Swan, Liverpool. Inside were 2 men, James Witham and Joseph Pearce. They drove there as a result of a criminal agreement with Niall Barry and Sean Zoysa to kill the occupants of 40 Leinster Road using a Scorpion submachine gun. They each knew that Lee Harrison lived there with his partner, Ashley Dale. It was their home. The car had been acquired in the days leading up to what happened, with false number plates ready to use when the hiding of the car followed. In an attempt to bring the occupants out of the house, Witham and Pearce stabbed the car tyres of the car parked outside. That set off the car alarm. Inside the house was Ashley Dale in her pyjamas, watching television. When she heard the alarm, she believed it was caused by heavy rain, and so she stayed inside. Outside, Witham and Pearce waited for their moment for this planned killing. What followed was a murder of such seriousness that it has shocked both the local community and many in this country. The use of a military-grade submachine gun to kill a young woman in her own home at night in a planned shooting of the occupants of that house is beyond any understanding. At just after midnight, Witham got out of the Hyundai car, wearing a balaclava to hide his face. He carried that Scorpion submachine gun, loaded with 15 bullets. He broke through the locked front door, walked into the dining room. Ashley was in that room alone, moving towards the kitchen back door to escape, and there were lights on so that she was visible. Witham wickedly fired 10 bullets towards her, as she was vulnerable and defenceless. One of those bullets passed through her abdomen and killed her. Her screams were heard by neighbours. Leaving her to die, Witham went upstairs looking for Lee Harrison, In a bedroom, he fired a further 5 bullets into the wall as a clear statement that if he had been in the house, he would have been killed also. After the shooting, Witham and Peers drove away. The car was parked elsewhere, out of view, and later that day to be hidden on the driveway of a property in St Helens. A week later, it was driven by Peers and Zoysa to be hidden on another driveway in St Helens, until it was discovered by the police on the 9th of October. Ashley Dale died very shortly after she was shot. Lee Harrison has refused to cooperate in the police investigation into her murder. So involved with criminal drug-dealing gangs is he. For the family of Ashley Dale, this must have been a cruel twist to the tragic loss of their daughter and sister. Not only was she brutally killed in her own home, but Lee Harrison has refused to assist the police to bring her killers to justice. Stand up. I sentence each of you to imprisonment for life on count 1 for the murder of Ashley Dale. Niall Barry, on count 1, murder. Your minimum term is increased to 35 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending in counts 2, 3, and in the second indictment. Your minimum term is 47 years, less 433 days served on remand. James Witham, on count 1, murder. Your minimum term is also increased to 35 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending on counts 2 and 3. Your minimum term is 43 years, less 295 days served on remand. Joseph Peers, on count 1, murder. Your minimum term is increased to 33 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending in counts 2 and 3. Your minimum term is 41 years, less 295 days served on remand. Sean Zoysa, on count 1, murder. Your minimum term is increased to 32 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending in counts 2 and 3 and the second indictment. Your minimum term is 42 years, less 448 days served on remand. On count 2, conspiracy to murder, I impose a concurrent sentence of imprisonment for life on each of you, with a minimum term of 18 years custody. On count 3, conspiracy to possess a prohibited firearm and ammunition with intent to endanger life, I impose a concurrent sentence of 14 years imprisonment on each of you. The sentences on the second indictment of 30 years imprisonment for you, Barry, and 10 years for you, Zoysa, will also be served concurrently. You will each be required to pay the statutory charge, but in your cases, Zoysa and Barry, I postpone the making of the order until the conclusion of the confiscation proceedings under the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002. In your cases, Peers and Witham, I make the surcharge order now, which will be in the appropriate amount and set out in the court order. Take them down.
Ian Fitzgibbon faced trial on the same charges but was acquitted, expressing jubilation at the courtroom verdict, likely due to his close relationship with Ashley and Lee. During the trial, he emphasized his friendship with Lee and indicated he wouldn't partake in a plot against a close friend.
Fucking hell, man! What the fuck?
They have terrorised Glasgow for a generation, locked in a bloody war over territory, drugs and money. The Lions and the Daniels rule by fear, intimidation and violence.
Kevin Gerbil, Carroll, among Scotland's most infamous criminals, rose as a feared enforcer for Glasgow's Daniel crime family. His brutal tactics, like the unsettling alien abduction, left victims unable to recall the trauma. Despite his notoriety, Carroll faced unexpected threats that spiraled his life out of control. Born August 24, 1980, at Glasgow's Stobhill Hospital, Carroll endured childhood bullying from Stephen and Edward Jr. Lyons, key figures in Glasgow's criminal underworld. Amidst rivalries with the Lyons and Daniel crime families, Carroll's association deepened with sons of Jame Daniel, Robert Daniel, and Francis Green, who shaped his path into crime. His involvement intensified as tensions between the Daniel and Lyons factions brewed. By his teens, Carroll's criminal record was established, landing him a 3-month sentence for car theft at 19. In his mid-20s, Kevin transitioned to a more profitable criminal career with the Daniel family, specializing in drug trafficking and enforcement. Known for his ruthless tactics, Kevin pioneered the alien abduction method of attack. As head enforcer, he handled rivalries aggressively, often leading nighttime raids on targets' homes, posing as police to abduct and transport victims to undisclosed locations. There, using brutal means, Kevin and his crew subjected victims to extreme physical and psychological torture, employing various power tools. Victims, often found later disoriented and unclothed, frequently could not recall the traumatic events due to fear or psychological trauma, hence coining the term alien abduction. Kevin was deeply entrenched in drug dealing with a distinctive modus operandi. He sold cocaine to known dealers and then orchestrated thefts to reclaim both the drugs and the money. In one notable incident, he sold 5 kilos of cocaine to a dealer, only to later ambush and reclaim the drugs. Another instance showcased Kevin's opportunism when he sought a specific weapon, a stolen SA-80 rifle with advanced accessories. Competing with the Lyons family, who had already placed a deposit, Kevin resorted to extreme measures, abducting and intimidating the soldier selling the rifle to secure both the weapon and the deposit. Amidst escalating tensions between the Lyons and Daniel crime families in northern Glasgow, Lyons in Milton and Daniels in Possil, Kevin found himself embroiled, leveraging his notoriety in the conflict. In 1992, Eddie Lyons Sr., the head of the Lyons family, was given the disused Churnside School in Milton for a community project. However, his real interest was in expanding his criminal empire. 3 years later, in 1995, while using the school as his headquarters, Eddie received £1.4 million in public funding. This might seem strange, but at the time, Eddie was putting up a convincing front of helping his local communities. Besides the usual conflicts over greed and control of drug territory, another reason for the feud's escalation emerged. In the summer of 2001, tensions soared when a large stash of the Daniels cocaine was stolen from a house in Milton Lyons territory. The stolen stash was then sold to the Lyons. The Lyons saw the Daniels move as an incursion into their market. This was the last straw for the Daniels, and Kevin, with his own grudge to bear, was more than eager to assist the Daniel family in the brewing conflict. Given Kevin's violent nature and the brewing feud between the two families, it's not surprising that there were people out for revenge. The first attempt on Kevin's life occurred in 2003, right outside his mother's home. Though he was injured, the attack ultimately failed to kill him. The second attack, 3 years later in 2006, was far less subtle. Kevin and his associate Ross Sherlock were walking in Bishopbriggs when they were suddenly ambushed in a drive-by shooting. Kevin was hit in the stomach but survived once again. This second attack was perhaps understandable given the circumstances. Allegedly, Kevin and Ross had vandalized a gravestone in Bishopbriggs belonging to Gary Lyons, the son of Eddie Lyons Sr., who had died of leukemia at the age of 8 in 1991. To make matters worse, the attack happened the day before Gary's relatives were due to visit the grave to mark his birthday. The Lyons family was outraged, as targeting the grave of an innocent child was a new low. If the Daniels were willing to stoop so low, the Lyons feared what else they might target. Furious, the Lyons sought immediate revenge and attempted to eliminate Kevin and Ross. From that point forward, the conflict became a tit-for-tat war. When one gang member was attacked, the opposing family would swiftly retaliate. It wasn't long after the failed hit on Kevin that the next attack occurred. Just 3 weeks later, on December 6, 2006, a highly public and ruthless incident unfolded. 2 hitmen from the Daniels, Raymond Anderson and James McDonald, stormed into the showroom of Apple Row Motors. This dealership was owned by David Lyons, the brother of Eddie Lyons Sr. In a brazen attack, the hitmen opened fire within minutes. Michael Lyons, David's 21-year-old nephew, was fatally wounded, while his cousin Stephen and several others were severely injured. Anderson and McDonald were swiftly apprehended and later sentenced to 35 years in prison for their crime. Despite the arrests, it was clear the Lyons would retaliate. Over the next 4 years, the feud intensified. Then on January 13, 2010, a pivotal event occurred. Kevin had arranged a meeting at the Asda car park in Robroyston, Glasgow. Sitting in the back seat of a black Audi A3 with 2 unarmed associates in the front, Kevin was unusually relaxed and unprepared for trouble. Suddenly, at 1:23 p.m., a Volkswagen Golf screeched to a halt, blocking the Audi in the busy car park. 2 men emerged from the Volkswagen and immediately opened fire on the Audi. Kevin's 2 associates in the front swiftly exited the car and fled, leaving Kevin vulnerable. He tragically succumbed to his injuries on the spot. Kevin was struck by at least 5 bullets out of the 13 fired at the car. One of those bullets fatally hit him in the head, ending his life. Despite the perception that the hit seemed to last for hours, the entire event unfolded in just 25 seconds.
As armed police and onlookers surround the car in which Kevin Carroll was
killed. Said she saw a hooded man holding a Clint Eastwood-style gun. There were lots of people around, and Mrs. Busby then recalled how she could hear a baby crying.
A shopper thought she was caught up in another Dunblane massacre when she heard gunfire in a supermarket car park.
The daylight execution of Kevin Carroll remains one of Glasgow's most infamous gangland hits. Known for his paranoia, Kevin often wore bulletproof vests and carried weapons for protection. However, on that fateful day, with numerous people seeking his demise, no amount of caution could save him. After 2 previous failed attempts on his life, the third proved fatal. Yet something about the incident felt unsettling. After months of investigation, the police arrested Ross Monaghan on July 30th, 2010. He was a well-known associate of the Lions and suspected to be the mastermind behind Kevin's assassination. However, the trial against him collapsed in 2012, and Ross Monaghan was not convicted. The judge ruled that there was insufficient evidence to sustain a guilty verdict. The entire case hinged on a single particle of firearms discharge residue found on a jacket, seized during a raid on Monaghan's home. At the time, forensic expert Alison Colley, working for the Scottish Police Authority, initially suggested the residue matched that found at the crime scene. However, during the trial, she clarified that the particle was too minuscule to draw definitive scientific conclusions. She admitted that she had conducted tests she wouldn't normally perform and was under pressure from detectives. Moreover, she was unaware that firearm officers had been involved in the search of Monaghan's house, posing a risk of cross-contamination. Due to these factors, the evidence was deemed inadmissible in court. As a result, Ross Monaghan walked away a free man, as there was not enough proof to link him to Kevin Carroll's assassination. If you find yourself questioning the discrepancies in the story, you're not alone. How did the Lions men manage to ambush Kevin, and why was he so unprepared? If you suspect there's something more sinister at play, you may be onto something. After Ross Monaghan's trial concluded, revelations surfaced, suggesting a deeper, more troubling narrative. It was uncovered that an insider had been feeding the Lions family confidential surveillance details, disgraced former officer Derek MacLeod. Derek had been employed by the Lothian and Borders Police Force. Unbeknownst to his colleagues, he was actively collaborating with the Lions gang. His information provided the family with crucial intelligence on Kevin and his associates, enabling them to evade police scrutiny. Once Derek's treachery was exposed, authorities raided his home. During the search, they discovered 85 kilograms of marijuana under his stairs and a cannabis farm in his garage. It appeared Derek had been assisted by the crime family in distributing his illicit products. As a consequence of his corruption, Derek MacLeod was sentenced to 2 years and 3 months for drug offenses and an additional 16 months for breaching the Official Secrets Act. His actions not only compromised law enforcement efforts, but also played a significant role in the events leading to Kevin Carroll's demise. However, if you're still puzzled by the inconsistencies surrounding Kevin's assassination, another theory suggests the Daniels themselves ordered the hit. This speculation may seem far-fetched, given Kevin's close ties with the Daniels. Yet sources within the Daniels family indicate otherwise. According to these sources, the bosses believed Kevin had become uncontrollable and was causing more trouble than he was worth. Shockingly, during his tenure with the Daniels, Kevin married Kelly Bowe, Jame Daniels' daughter, and they had 2 children together. Their relationship, however, was turbulent and often described as tumultuous. Kevin was known to have physically abused Kelly Bowe on multiple occasions, leaving her severely bruised. He also frequently disparaged her character publicly. Kevin's behavior wasn't limited to his wife. He also began to disrespect Jame Daniel himself. There were instances where Kevin threatened Jame and used derogatory and offensive language to describe him, including terms like fat gypsy and other colorful insults. These actions reportedly strained his relationship with the Daniels family. This deteriorating relationship and Kevin's erratic behavior may have led the Daniels to view him as a liability rather than an asset, prompting them to sanction his assassination despite their previous association. These kinds of insults don't go unnoticed in a crime family, especially when directed at its leader. What raised suspicions, particularly among Kevin's loyalists, was the circumstances surrounding his assassination. They found it hard to believe that Kevin would attend a meeting unprepared and off guard, unless he believed he was meeting someone he knew well. Another reason many suspected an inside job was the reaction of Kevin's associates. Instead of defending him, they fled the scene when the attack occurred. Remarkably, the assailants didn't pursue them. After the attackers left, Kevin's associates returned to the car and contacted Francis Fraggle Green, Jame Daniels' brother and a longtime friend of Kevin's. When Francis arrived, he entered the car and appeared to remove something from Kevin before departing, managing to arrive before the police, which struck many as suspicious. In 2015, William Patterson was convicted for his role in Kevin's assassination. Despite this, the feud between the Daniel and Lyons families continues unabated, both vying for dominance in Glasgow's underworld. Given the long-standing animosity between these families, it seems unlikely that their feud will cease anytime soon. On a chilly November evening back in 2019, officers from Dublin's Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau set out on a mission that would reshape the city's criminal landscape. Acting on valuable intelligence, they conducted a raid on a residence located in Woodford Grove, Clondalkin. Unbeknownst to them, this operation would become a pivotal moment in the ongoing battle against organized crime. Upon thoroughly searching the main house, the officers stumbled upon a small shed tucked away in the rear of the garden. With tension high and weapons at the ready, they noticed movement from within. Breaking the silence of the night, the command to stand down was given as the officers stormed into the shed. Inside, they encountered two individuals seated on a dilapidated couch. Among them was Trevor Byrne, a notorious figure infamous for his involvement in criminal activities, sending a shiver down the spine of law enforcement. Let's delve into it. With their firearms trained on the individuals, the officers demanded their surrender, yet Byrne remained unmoving, his gaze fixed upon them. Despite 2 additional warnings issued without response, the officers eventually holstered their weapons and forcibly removed the men from the couch, bringing them to the ground. This marked a significant triumph in Dublin's battle against organized crime, as they successfully apprehended one of the most dreaded gunmen associated with the Kinahan cartel. Shortly before Christmas in 2020, Byrne received a 9-year sentence for firearm-related offenses. During the search of the shed, beneath the very couch where Byrne had been seated, officers uncovered a loaded 9mm pistol. A DNA analysis linked the firearm to Byrne, who later confessed before the Special Criminal Court. He claimed to have possessed the weapon for self-defense, citing a threat to his life that had compelled him to flee the country back in 2016. Just months following his 9-year conviction, Trevor Byrne, a man with a rap sheet boasting over 40 criminal convictions, once again found himself in the legal spotlight. This time, he stood trial for his involvement in a bungled armed robbery at Boyle's Sports, a local bookmaker situated in the heart of Applewood Village, Swords County, Dublin. Following the 2010 heist, Byrne proceeded to carjack a woman at gunpoint, issuing threats of violence. Convicted by a non-jury court, Byrne's guilt was established through the identification of a mobile phone left at the crime scene, along with recognition from CCTV footage. Consequently, he was handed a hefty sentence of 17.5 years, encompassing both firearm offenses and the armed robbery. However, this wasn't Byrne's inaugural encounter with the lengthy arm of the law. In 2005, another chapter of his criminal saga unfolded as he received an 8-year sentence for orchestrating a brazen robbery at an off-license establishment. During the heist, Byrne held 10 security guards at gunpoint before making a daring escape in a patrol car, subsequently absconding in a taxi after menacing the driver at gunpoint, all while being pursued by law enforcement. Astonishingly, a mere 4 months following his November 2009 release from prison, Byrne perpetrated the robbery and swords. Trevor Byrne's tale is one woven with threads of violence, betrayal, and brazen criminal exploits, leaving an indelible imprint upon the city's landscape. Yet, his notoriety transcends mere trigger-pulling. He was the orchestrator of the thriving drug trade in Finglas on behalf of the Kinahan cartel, a position that commanded both reverence and dread. His ascent was facilitated under the mentorship of Glenn David Ward, alias Mr. Flashy, who later assumed control over Finglas in 2017, thereby cementing Byrne's association with the notorious Gucci gang, which wreaked havoc in the locality for years. Byrne's name became synonymous with controversy, particularly as a prime suspect in the 2014 shooting of John Gilligan, a prominent figure in the criminal underworld. Gilligan had accused Byrne of masterminding assassination attempts against him in both 2013 and 2014, stemming from a long-standing feud rooted in their shared time at Port Leash Prison. It's been rumored that Byrne's assault on Gilligan during their incarceration was instigated by Brian the Tosser Meehan, irate over a media interview given by Gilligan. Despite Gilligan's steadfast conviction of Byrne's involvement in the attacks, no charges were laid against Byrne in connection with these incidents. Authorities strongly suspect Trevor Byrne's deep entanglement in the violent Kinahan-Hutch feud, a harrowing saga that sent shockwaves through the city's foundation. His name emerged in connection with chilling episodes of gangland violence, notably the brutal slaying of Eddie Nettie Hutch, a brother of Jerry the Monk Hutch, mere days following the notorious Regency Hotel shooting in 2016. Nettie, returning home from his taxi driving duties around 7:45 p.m., fell victim to a ruthless ambush. As he exited his taxi, a group of 4 assailants emerged from a BMW, swiftly advancing towards him. In a hail of gunfire, Nettie was mercilessly gunned down, sustaining up to 9 fatal wounds before collapsing in the hallway of his own residence. Tragically, his wife, unsuspecting and present at the time, witnessed the horrifying ordeal unfold. Byrne found himself thrust into the spotlight following his arrest in May 2016, subjected to rigorous interrogation at Mountjoy Garda Station. He was among the initial 9 individuals apprehended in connection with the murder investigation. However, despite intense scrutiny, Byrne emerged from the ordeal unscathed, with no charges hanging over his head. Nevertheless, the whispers persisted, with rumors of his complicity reverberating throughout Dublin's labyrinthine alleys. Following his release, Byrne vanished from the country, purportedly seeking refuge in the UK. Yet just when Dublin believed him to be a distant memory, Byrne resurfaced on the city's streets, making a reappearance shortly before his subsequent arrest in 2019. Years later, in April 2023, while still serving his 17.5-year prison term at Mountjoy Prison, Trevor Byrne faced a second arrest in connection with the murder of Nettie Hutch, reigniting suspicions of his involvement as one of the gunmen. As the legal proceedings unfold, the case remains ongoing, casting a shadow over Byrne's fate. Yet, even behind bars, Byrne's influence seemed uncontainable. Within the confines of Mountjoy, he embraced his notorious persona, forging alliances with fellow inmates affiliated with the Kinahan cartel. A series of photographs captured within the prison's high-security walls provide a glimpse into Byrne's life, seemingly untouched by incarceration. These images depict him celebrating his 40th birthday surrounded by fellow inmates, including Kevin Gibson, Graham Gardner, Glenn Thompson, and Robert Brown. Gibson, a close associate of senior cartel member Liam Byrne, found himself incarcerated for orchestrating a $280,000 cocaine smuggling operation, serving a 7-year sentence. Gardner, identified as the Kinahan quartermaster, received a 9-year sentence for his involvement in the possession of a significant cache of firearms. These weapons were believed to be earmarked for use in targeting a close associate of Jerry the Monk Hutch during a Garda operation targeting the Kinahan gang in 2016. Thompson and Brown, a former British Army soldier, received sentences of 17.5 years and 11.5 years respectively for their involvement in possessing firearms. Alongside Thompson's brother Gary, they were apprehended in a van located in an underground car park merely 250 meters from the residence of their intended target, Patrick "Patsy" Hutch, another brother of Jerry the Monk Hutch. Garda intelligence has long linked Trevor Byrne to associates of the Kinahan cartel operating within Dublin. In years past, the seasoned criminal found himself compelled to seek protection from his cartel affiliates, amidst threats from notorious crime boss Eamon the Don Dunn. Byrne maintained a close association with the late John Daly, a notorious figure from Finglas known for his outspoken demeanor and volatile temper. Daly met his demise in 2007, allegedly due to concerns that he was encroaching on the territory of Aimee the Don Dunn in North Dublin. It's rumored that Dunn, along with hired hitman Paddy Doyle and incarcerated Fat Freddie Thompson, paid $10,000 to orchestrate Daly's assassination. Following Daly's murder, Dunn harbored apprehensions regarding potential reprisals upon Byrne's release from prison in December 2009. In an attempt to prove his allegiance to Dunn, Byrne was reportedly coerced into setting up another criminal figure, John Paul Joyce. However, Byrne balked at the directive and instead sought refuge with the Kinahan cartel. With the assistance of his ally Gary Hutch, Byrne reached out to Daniel Kinahan, securing permission to relocate to the Costa del Sol for safety. Despite Byrne's refusal to comply with Dunn's demands, the crime boss proceeded to eliminate John Paul Joyce before meeting his own demise the following April.
On a quiet day in late August 2019, a 44-year-old woman named Aimee Betro stepped off a transatlantic flight at Manchester Airport. She moved like any tourist might, alone, inconspicuous, with a string of hotel reservations in cities like Derby, London, Brighton, and Birmingham. With no criminal history and no one expecting her arrival, her presence raised no red flags. Yet, she had not come to sightsee. 2 weeks after her arrival, in a quiet corner of Birmingham, she made a move, then made it again. Both attempts failed. By the time law enforcement began piecing together the puzzle, Aimee Betro had already vanished. Her swift disappearance would trigger an international investigation that would stretch across continents and last nearly 5 years. The chain of events that brought an American woman to a British suburb with deadly intent began more than a year earlier. In July 2018, a violent altercation took place inside a Birmingham clothing store. It involved two families, the Ali family, who owned the boutique, and the Nazirs, a father and son duo from Derby. What began as a heated argument escalated into physical violence. Tempers flared, windows were shattered, and several people were injured. Most viewed it as just another street-level dispute. But beneath the surface, resentment hardened into something more dangerous. By the following summer, that anger had not dissipated. It had festered. Authorities allege that Muhammad Alam, 56, and his son Muhammad Nazir, 30, sought revenge. No longer interested in legal battles or verbal threats, they were determined to exact retribution. According to court documents, they turned to a method far more chilling. They sought to hire someone to carry out a killing on their behalf. Their target? Sikander Ali, the son of the boutique owner and one of the central figures in the 2018 clash. Aimee Betro didn't match the typical profile of a contract killer. A former employee of the Milwaukee Brewers baseball team, she had a background in childcare and a social media trail that included selfies, music festivals, and late-night cocktails. But on 22nd August 2019, she landed in the UK with no clear reason for travel and no return ticket. Authorities now believe her tourist act was a facade. Over the next 2 weeks, she traveled between cities under her own name, staying in hotels and blending in. Surveillance footage captured her in Brighton enjoying drinks, posting light-hearted content online, and referencing a partner in crime. She also purchased a used Mercedes-Benz shortly after arriving, which police say became her mobile base of operations. Behind the scenes, phone data would later confirm her contact with both Muhammad Alam and Muhammad Nazir. It was not a sightseeing tour, it was reconnaissance. On 7 September 2019, just before sunset, the quiet street of Misham Grove in Acox Green, Birmingham, became the scene of an attempted assassination. Aimee arrived in her Mercedes, veiled and composed. She walked calmly toward a parked vehicle. Inside, it was Sikander Ali. Without warning, she raised a firearm and took aim, but the weapon failed to discharge. It jammed. Ali, realizing the danger, reversed his vehicle in panic, hitting a nearby car's open door. The would-be assassin turned and fled. She quickly abandoned the car and booked a taxi, calmly speaking to the dispatcher. No trace of urgency in her voice. It would be weeks before police pieced together that the woman was not a resident or a passerby. She was a foreign national brought in with a singular objective. Just hours after her botched hit, Aimee returned. This time, under cover of darkness and without disguise, she arrived by taxi at the same location. The family inside the home was asleep. She stepped out, raised the same weapon, and fired 3 shots into the upper floor of the building. No one was injured, but the bullets shattered glass and tore into interior walls. Her goal now was not a kill, it was a message. In the hours that followed, the Ali family received a string of threatening messages. The sender accused them of betrayal and warned them not to test her further. "Stop playing hide and seek," one message read. "You're lucky it jammed." Another offered a promise. "Watch your back, I'll be shedding blood soon." Then, just as quickly as she had arrived, she disappeared, boarding a flight back to the US on 9 September 2019. In the aftermath, law enforcement began collecting evidence. CCTV footage, shell casings, and a registered Mercedes abandoned near the scene pointed to an unknown woman. Slowly, investigators with the West Midlands Police and Derbyshire Constabulary began to connect the dots. Hotel bookings, phone records, and digital footprints led to the identification of Aimee Betro. Surveillance showed a link to Mohammed Nazir, who had travelled to the US shortly after the failed shooting. His travel paperwork listed Betro as his emergency contact, a damning association. Then came a crucial discovery. Customs officers flagged a package containing firearm components shipped from Illinois to the UK. The return address matched Betro's residence in Wisconsin. This shipment added a new layer: illegal importation of weapons, with the implication that the hit had been planned long before she landed in Manchester. Nazir was arrested after returning to the UK, followed by his father Alam. In 2022, their case came before Birmingham Crown Court. Prosecutors laid out a calculated assassination plot born from a personal feud, not gang warfare or organised crime. The jury heard how Aimee Betro had been recruited as a disposable outsider to carry out the killing. The evidence included hotel receipts, communication records, and travel logs. Even Nazir's emergency contact form, listing Betro's name, was presented. Nazir was convicted of conspiracy to murder, illegal possession of a firearm, firearm importation, and perverting justice. Alam was also convicted of conspiracy to murder. But the woman at the heart of the crime, the would-be shooter, remained beyond their reach. Between 2019 and 2024, Aimee Betro became a ghost. Her name was placed on an Interpol red notice, and international law enforcement kept a watchful eye. Yet, she evaded capture. No sightings, no digital traces. It wasn't police work that finally tracked her down. It was journalism. Reporters at Mail Online began reviewing her past social media activity. Analysing backgrounds in selfies and comparing architecture, they traced her to a residential complex near Yerevan, the capital of Armenia. She had been living there quietly, under her real name, paying cash for rent and working remotely. Her neighbours barely knew her. Some remembered her shouting at a cat, but little else stood out. Once authorities confirmed her location, British officials requested secrecy while working with Armenian counterparts. In early 2024, Armenian law enforcement carried out a dawn raid. Aimee Betro did not resist. She was detained without incident and held pending extradition. In January 2025, she was escorted to the UK under tight security. The woman who had evaded justice for nearly 5 years now found herself on British soil, wearing handcuffs instead of sunglasses. She appeared before Birmingham Magistrates Court shortly after her arrival. Calm, reserved, and plainly dressed, she confirmed her identity and gave an address in Armenia. There was no bail application. The charges read out were severe: conspiracy to murder, possession of a firearm with intent to cause fear, and unlawful importation of ammunition. Aimee Betro's next appearance came via video link from HMP New Hall, a women's prison in Wakefield. She pleaded not guilty to all charges, responding to each with composure. "Correct," she said, when asked to confirm her plea. The trial ended on Tuesday, the 12th of August 2025, which was presided over by the same judge who sentenced her co-conspirators. Nazir is currently serving a 30-year sentence. His father received 15 years. Aimee Betro was found guilty of taking part in a botched assassination attempt on a Birmingham street. Prosecutors told the court Betro, who was living in Armenia until earlier this year, flew to Britain in August 2019 to take part in a plot orchestrated by co-conspirators Mohammed Aslam, 56, and his son. This is not a story about organized crime or global syndicates. It's a tale of a local feud that spiraled into international intrigue, a transatlantic plot involving a bitter rivalry, a mysterious American, and an elaborate game of cat and mouse. 5 years after a failed shooting in Birmingham, all 3 conspirators are finally in custody. As Aimee Betro awaits sentencing, many questions remain unanswered. What led her to agree to such a plan? How did a woman from Wisconsin end up firing bullets into a British home? And why did she disappear so completely, only to be found by a clue in an Instagram photo? Until then, all that remains is silence, and the echoes of a gun that failed to fire.
On a tranquil September morning in 2015, amidst the warm glow of sunrise, a harrowing incident transpired within a Spanish apartment complex. Concealed within the shadows of an underground car park, an assailant, shrouded in a black balaclava, lay in ambush behind a vehicle. Patiently biding time, he awaited the return of his intended target, a routine morning jogger. Having meticulously observed his victim for days, the assassin seized the moment as soon as the individual entered his line of sight. Swiftly emerging from the concealment, he aimed his weapon, only to be thwarted by a malfunctioning firearm. Seizing this unexpected opportunity, the intended victim managed to evade immediate danger, setting off a frantic pursuit. The atmosphere crackled with tension as the 2 figures sprinted, their footsteps echoing across the outdoor pool area. In a cornered and desperate state, the pursued individual made a dash towards a sealed gate, desperately seeking refuge. However, there was no reprieve, and the assailant unleashed a barrage of shots. Tragically, the victim was identified as Gary Hutch, the nephew of Jerry the Monk Hutch, a notorious figure in the criminal underworld involved in illicit drug dealings. The incident marked the untimely demise of Gary Hutch on the spot. Hutch shared a common background with his assailant, an individual who, like him, sought to establish a criminal career under the sun. Once aligned with the Kinahan gang, Hutch's trajectory took a dark turn when accusations of betrayal branded him as a potential informant within the cartel's ranks. In the aftermath of a bold attack, James Quinn, known as Frizzy due to his distinctive hair, exuded confidence in having eluded the grasp of the law. He orchestrated the burning of the getaway vehicle, a pilfered BMW X3, not far from the scene of the murder. Unbeknownst to him, a vigilant neighbor witnessed the act and promptly extinguished the flames. Shortly thereafter, law enforcement capitalized on this crucial lead. The discovery of DNA traces, specifically found on a black Oakley baseball cap recovered from the torched BMW, ignited a comprehensive investigation. This inquiry triggered a series of coordinated raids and search operations spanning both Dublin and southern Spain. The subsequent year unraveled Quinn's fugitive existence when he was apprehended in Madrid while attempting to board a flight. The meticulous work of undercover police operatives included obtaining Quinn's DNA from a water bottle used at a train station in Madrid. This genetic evidence seamlessly matched the DNA recovered from the cap found at the BMW crime scene. The capture marked a significant triumph for law enforcement, exposing Quinn as an individual deeply entrenched in a life marked by crime and violence. Fast forward to 2018, and the courtroom set the stage for justice to finally apprehend James Quinn. A Spanish judge handed down a 20-year prison sentence for the murder, coupled with an additional 2 years for illegal weapons possession. Throughout the trial, Quinn consistently maintained that he was in bed with a hangover and a prostitute at the time of Hutch's killing. However, he failed to produce any evidence substantiating this alibi. Despite widespread beliefs implicating Quinn, a childhood friend of Daniel Kinahan, as the triggerman, the judge could not definitively establish his role as the shooter. Nevertheless, Quinn was deemed a necessary participant, serving as a lookout and getaway driver. The potential for a life sentence was dismissed due to the inability to prove Quinn's affiliation with the criminal organization implicated in the murder. Furthermore, the jurors ruled out any concrete evidence suggesting that Quinn received payment for the hit. The gun, leading to his conviction, was discovered in a bedside table during a search of Quinn's residence. The courtroom drama concluded with Quinn's sentencing, underscoring the complexities of establishing certain aspects of his involvement in the crime. Efforts by James Quinn's legal team to overturn his conviction faced a resounding rejection from 3 appeal judges who dismissed every aspect of the lawyer's claims, asserting his wrongful conviction. Quinn's incarceration delivered a significant blow to Daniel Kinahan and his criminal network. According to law enforcement sources, Quinn, known as Frizzy, posed a substantial threat to public safety throughout his criminal career. His gun attack on Gary Hutch initiated a violent underworld conflict famously known as the Kinahan-Hutch feud, a feud that has claimed multiple lives. Quinn's criminal history extends beyond the ordinary. He wasn't merely a foot soldier, but a key player in a perilous game. As the nephew of Martin Foley, also known as the Viper, and a former member of a gang led by Martin the General Cahill, Quinn's connections run deep within the criminal underworld. His affiliation with the Kinahan gang, one of Ireland's most notorious crime syndicates, underscores the magnitude of his influence and the inherent danger he represents. A highly skilled former kickboxer, Quinn spent a decade splitting his time between Dublin and Spain, predominantly residing near Marbella in the years leading up to his arrest. His arrest marked a turning point in the criminal saga of an individual deeply embedded in the dangerous world of organized crime. Dublin's law enforcement had issued grave warnings to James Quinn, alerting him to the imminent danger to his life. Functioning as an enforcer in the realm of drug dealing, Quinn solidified his standing through a series of violent criminal acts, amassing a reputation underscored by over 70 convictions, ranging from traffic offenses to brutal assaults. In 2008, Quinn assaulted a Garda on South Great George's Street, marking a pivotal moment in his criminal history. 2 months later, he was suspected of shooting a Dublin drug addict in the knees after the intruder had broken into a residence. Despite the severity of these incidents, the victim declined to file a complaint with the Garda, resulting in Quinn avoiding formal charges. In July 2013, Quinn faced sentencing at the Dublin Circuit Court for threatening a bouncer who had ejected him from a city centre pub. The court heard details of how Quinn, rather than outright threatening the bouncer at the time of ejection, ominously warned him of impending regret. Quinn later pursued the bouncer to his residence, where, at a traffic stop, he reappeared with a hammer, shattering the bouncer's windshield. "I told you you'd be sorry, you bastard," Quinn declared, emphasizing the sinister nature of his actions. This incident further added to Quinn's notorious criminal record, painting a vivid picture of his volatile and dangerous tendencies. In the subsequent year, Gerard Hatchet Kavanagh, a 44-year-old Dubliner employed as an enforcer for the Kinahan gang, met a fatal end in a bar near Marbella. His demise was a result of an internal dispute within the Kinahan gang. Kavanagh had established a reputation as an enforcer in the Irish underworld, acting on behalf of the Kinahan cartel. His role involved coercively collecting payment for drug debts in both Ireland and Spain. Prior to this, he had a history as a drug dealer. Kavanagh's son, Jame, was present at the infamous weigh-in at the Regency Hotel in 2016, where a shooting occurred. The internal discord within the Kinahan gang that led to Kavanagh's demise stemmed from accusations of theft and involvement in defrauding Russian gangsters. James Quinn emerged as the chief suspect in orchestrating Kavanagh's murder. Additionally, Quinn was suspected of complicity in the killing of Kavanagh's brother Paul just 6 months later. During the operation that culminated in Quinn's arrest in Madrid, Spanish law enforcement seized a yacht and a Bentley car suspected to be linked to James Quinn. Simultaneously, in Dublin, police confiscated €3,000 in cash, along with computers, phones, counterfeit identification papers, and financial documents tied to property transactions and offshore bank accounts. Following his arrest, Quinn found himself incarcerated in Arkadona Prison, a maximum security facility notorious for housing infamous criminals. Notably, this prison was the same institution where Christy Kinahan and his sons, Daniel and Christopher Jr., had been detained after their arrests in May 2010 as part of Operation Shovel, a major police operation targeting drug trafficking and money laundering. Phone taps conducted by the Spanish police unveiled that James Quinn and Gary Hutch maintained regular contact. During these intercepted calls, Quinn and Hutch were heard discussing matters such as hiring prostitutes, contradicting Quinn's earlier assertion that they were not associates. Subsequently, Quinn was transferred to Topus Jail, a remote high-security facility in western Spain, situated 26 kilometers outside the city of Salamanca. Notably, Topus Jail houses ETA terror leaders and prominent Moroccan al-Qaeda prisoners. Ironically, Quinn had previously shared a prison cell with Derek Delboy Hutch, Gary Hutch's brother, in Wheatfield Prison in 2011. At that time, Quinn and Delboy were close associates, having been part of the same gang. Their placement together was influenced by Delboy's offer of protection to Quinn. However, as time passed, Quinn found himself compelled to choose sides when Gary fell out of favor with the cartel. Despite Quinn's earlier loyalty to the cartel, especially to Daniel Kinahan, just 4 years after sharing a prison cell with Delboy, Quinn was enlisted by the Kinahans to orchestrate the murder of Delboy's brother. Having now been convicted of killing another notorious figure in the gangland scene, Quinn faces several decades in prison. However, the prospect of future threats looms large, particularly when he is eventually released. Members of the Hutch gang have consistently blamed Quinn for Gary's murder and vowed revenge, suggesting that Quinn's post-incarceration life may be fraught with danger.
Police were called to a property in Ashland Close just before 7 p.m. last night. Officers attended alongside colleagues from the East of England Ambulance Service and, on arrival, found 3 women with serious injuries.
Well, the evidence really against Kyle Clifford was overwhelming. He had previously admitted to all the charges against him, and that was the murder of his ex-girlfriend Louise Hunt, the murder of her sister Hannah Hunt, and the murder of their mother Carroll Hunt.
In the Irish Hennessy, Carlingford locked and AP McCoy, get up! Of course he did! Carlingford Lock beats Foxrock. Lord Windermere, the Gold Cup winner, back in 3rd place, but he ran a tremendous Cheltenham trial.
The Hunt family was well known in broadcasting circles. John Hunt, a respected TV racing commentator, was celebrated for his insightful commentary and warm personality. His family, his wife Carroll, aged 61, and their 2 daughters Louise, 25, and Hannah, 28, were the heart of his world. Carroll was known for her kindness and grace, while Louise and Hannah, though young, had already begun to make their mark in their own ways. Their life together appeared peaceful and full of promise, with the family often seen sharing smiles and laughter at public events and on television interviews. However, beneath the public smiles lay private challenges. As in many families, there were struggles and unspoken tensions that were kept away from the spotlight. But nothing could have prepared them for the darkness that was about to descend upon their lives. On a cold evening that would forever scar the memories of those who knew the Hunts, tragedy struck. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, an unimaginable act unfolded, a crime so brutal it would rock the nation. That night, Kyle Clifford, a man whose past was marked by violent behavior and disturbing obsessions, carried out an attack that would leave the Hunt family shattered. According to evidence later presented in court, Clifford targeted the Hunt residence with chilling precision. It began with an unannounced intrusion, and within moments, the home that once radiated warmth turned into a scene of horror. Carroll Hunt was found brutally murdered in her own living room, her life extinguished in an act of savagery that defied comprehension. Shortly after, the bodies of Louise and Hannah, who had returned home from an evening out, were discovered. The sisters, full of promise and dreams, had been taken from their family in an act of pure, unrelenting violence. When the first calls came into the police station reporting a disturbance at the Hunt residence, investigators arrived to a scene of chaos. The blood-stained floors, shattered glass, and the overwhelming silence in the aftermath of violence told a story of brutality. Emergency services worked feverishly to secure the scene, and forensic teams began collecting evidence. Initial examinations suggested that the attack had been meticulously planned. The weapon used, a modified high-powered firearm, had left distinctive marks hinting at the killer's technical expertise. Traces of trace evidence, including fingerprints and DNA samples, were carefully cataloged. Detectives noted that the method of execution was deliberate. The victims were killed swiftly and with a cold precision that left little chance for resistance. In the days following the crime, the investigation deepened. Authorities discovered that Kyle Clifford, a man with a history of violent outbursts and previous run-ins with the law, had been seen in the vicinity of the Hunt residence on the night of the murders. His presence, coupled with prior intelligence about his potential motives, made him an immediate person of interest. Kyle Clifford was not a stranger to controversy. His troubled past had long been a subject of discussion among law enforcement, though many had hoped he would eventually reform. However, his latest actions proved that his inner demons had only grown more violent. Neighbors recalled seeing a quiet, brooding figure lurking near the Hunt home, and anonymous tips soon began to circulate among the investigative teams. Clifford's background revealed a history of isolation, mental health issues, and a growing fixation on retribution. His motives appeared personal, a deep-seated anger that had finally erupted in a moment of unspeakable violence. As detectives pieced together his movements on the night of the crime, a clearer picture emerged of a man who had planned the attack with disturbing detail. Surveillance footage from nearby streets and witness testimonies helped link Clifford to the scene, setting the stage for the case that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Forensic experts played a crucial role in the investigation. The unique characteristics of the weapon used, combined with trace evidence such as fibers and unidentified DNA, began to point unambiguously toward Clifford. Investigators discovered that certain items found at the scene, personal belongings inadvertently left behind, matched those in Clifford's possession. Moreover, digital evidence, including cell phone records and GPS data, placed Clifford within close proximity of the Hunt residence on that fatal night. The mounting physical and circumstantial evidence created a compelling case against him, and the pressure on the investigators intensified. Public outcry grew as news of the gruesome murders spread, demanding swift justice for the Hunt family. After weeks of painstaking work, law enforcement finally obtained enough evidence to move forward with an arrest. On a crisp morning, officers executed a well-coordinated operation at a rundown apartment where Clifford was believed to be hiding. In a tense standoff, Clifford was apprehended without further incident. His calm, almost eerie demeanor during the arrest only added to the chilling narrative surrounding the case. The arrest was met with mixed reactions, relief among the community, and a renewed determination by the police to ensure that justice was served for Carroll, Louise, and Hannah Hunt. The media descended upon the case, and Clifford's name quickly became synonymous with the heinous crime. Kyle Clifford's trial was one of the most anticipated legal proceedings in recent history. The courtroom was packed with members of the public, journalists, and, most poignantly, family members of the victims, all seeking justice. Over the course of the trial, prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence, meticulous forensic analysis, compelling witness testimonies, and a series of circumstantial clues that painted a damning picture of Clifford's involvement. Under intense cross-examination, Clifford's previously impenetrable facade began to crumble. In a dramatic moment that sent shockwaves through the courtroom, he broke down and confessed to the murders. His confession was both methodical and chilling. He recounted how years of isolation, simmering resentment, and a desire for retribution had led him to commit the unthinkable. Clifford's words revealed a mind deeply scarred by neglect, now twisted into a weapon of terror. Following a grueling trial, the jury returned a unanimous verdict. Kyle Clifford was found guilty of the murder of Carroll Hunt and her daughters, Louise and Hannah. The sentence that followed was severe: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For the Hunt family and the community at large, the verdict was a bittersweet moment of closure after enduring unspeakable loss. The sentencing marked the end of a long and arduous pursuit of justice, but it also served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring impact of violence. As the gavel fell, voices in the courtroom rose in a mix of relief, sorrow, and righteous indignation, a collective outcry that would resonate for years to come. In the months following the trial, the story of the Hunt family's tragedy and Kyle Clifford's conviction dominated headlines. Memorial services were held for Carroll, Louise, and Hannah, and public vigils became a common sight as communities sought to heal from the collective trauma. the case spurred significant changes in local law enforcement practices and led to calls for improved support systems for victims of violent crime. For many, the case became a symbol of how a single act of unthinkable violence could shatter a community. The Hunt family, forever marked by their loss, became vocal advocates for victims' rights and reforms in criminal justice. Their courage in the face of unimaginable grief inspired widespread support and sparked debates about how society could better protect vulnerable families from similar fates. Today, the legacy of Kyle Clifford's crimes endures as a somber reminder of the depths to which human cruelty can descend. His actions have left an indelible mark on the national consciousness, a case that not only brought justice for one family, but also served as a catalyst for broader discussions about mental health, social neglect, and the importance of early intervention. In academic circles and media retrospectives, the case is frequently examined as a cautionary tale. Experts point to the interplay between a troubled upbringing, isolation, and the absence of timely support as factors that can culminate in such devastating acts of violence. The story of the Hunt family and Kyle Clifford continues to influence policy debates and community initiatives aimed at preventing future tragedies. The tragedy that befell the Hunt family has led to concrete changes in both local and national policies. Law enforcement agencies have revamped their investigative techniques, and new support networks have been established for families affected by violent crime. Mental health services have also seen increased funding, driven by a renewed commitment to addressing the root causes of criminal behavior. The case has left a legacy that serves as both a memorial to Carroll, Louise, and Hannah Hunt, and a powerful impetus for societal change. Their story remains a haunting chapter in the nation's history, a stark reminder that behind every headline lies a human tragedy, and that collective action is essential to ensure such darkness is not allowed to take root again.
Do you accept, Kyle, that based on the evidence, that this is a premeditated murder of 3 people?
No comment.
Do you accept that you have meticulously planned this murder from the moment that you split up Louise?
No comment.
From the moment that she sent you that text message at the end of June, you began to plan her murder? Yes?
No comment.
It's evident quite clearly from your purchase of the crossbow, from your purchase of the additional bolts, from the purchase of the gun and the knife, in the 2 weeks leading up to the murders. Do you agree?
No comment.
Do you agree that it shows that you only had one thing in mind, and that planning began when you purchased these items? You purchased rope and you purchased duct tape in order to restrain Louise and Hannah and Carroll, didn't you?
No comment.
5-6 days before this happened, you make these significant purchases that really only have one plausible explanation, didn't you?
No comment.
The only plausible explanation is that they were purchased in order for you to carry out these murders. Do you agree?
No comment.
You got to the address and you came well prepared. You came prepared with Louise's belongings, didn't you?
No comment.
Louise's belongings were your ticket into that address. Yes?
No comment.
You deceived your way into that address at the front door with Carroll, pretending that you were having a civil and friendly conversation and returning Louise's property, and you'd even written out a thank you card. Yes?
No comment.
Next thing I'd like to speak to you about, Kyle, is some more information, some more evidence that we've obtained from the download of your mobile phone. So on the mobile phone, in the notes section, there is a note which is titled Last Letter, and it's written to different family members, has individual paragraphs addressed to each individual family member. This item was created on the 26th of June and the last modification was on the 7th of July. The opening part of the note reads as such: "Please don't think of this as me throwing my life away. I have lived, and I am grateful for everything and everyone that has been a part of it. It is now my time to leave and be at peace, as this is what I ultimately want. I know you will all have so many questions and wish you could have done something different to prevent this. However, none of you have failed, and there is simply nothing any of you could have done. This is my decision to just be at peace. You all have to take care of each other and speak to each other, as that will be the best thing for you all. I love you all so much." You okay, Carl? To carry on? When you wrote that note, had you already planned the murders of Louise, Carroll and Hannah? So I'm interested in the words "prevent this." So tell me what you mean by "prevent this." Do you mean the murders of Carroll, Hannah and Louise? The next note is addressed to myself. "I don't want to live my life without her. I don't want to experience new things. Nothing I can think of can make me happy. I know I could have gone to therapy, found faith and become a new, better person, but I just simply don't want to. I'm so sorry I didn't wait to move on and find my future wife, have the children I always wanted." What do you mean by that?
No comment.
Explain to me why you decided to deprive Hannah and Louise of that privilege.
No comment.
What gave you the right to do that?
No comment.
What gave you the right to deprive Carroll of seeing her future grandchildren?
No comment.
It's a very self-centred note and doesn't take into account anybody else. Do you agree with that?
No comment.
There's no apology to the Hunt family, is there?
No comment.
The only apology is to yourself. Do you feel that these are quite self-centred words?
No comment.
Why didn't you seek help, Kyle?
No comment.
You couldn't be bothered, is what the letter suggests. Am I wrong?
No comment.
You don't want to live your life without her. Explain that.
No comment.
But of course, you sit here in front of us and she's dead. Tell me how this has happened.
No comment.
Is your intention to make people feel sorry for you writing these letters?
No comment.
Look at your behaviour. Look how calmly and nonchalantly you walk away from that house. You've just killed 3 people and you stroll away like you're going down the shops. It wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a loss of control. You didn't go to the address and all of a sudden form this intent to kill Carroll, kill Louise, kill Hannah. You'd gone there with that sole intention in mind. You went there. The CCTV footage shows throughout that you are cool, you are calm, you're collected, you're considered. There is nothing about that which suggests that you've gone there for anything else than to kill almost an entire family. I'm right in what I'm saying, aren't I, Kyle?
No comment.
Please correct me if I am completely wrong.
Attack on her and her family. You first killed her mother, Carroll, who even on that day showed you nothing but kindness moments before you attacked her. You raped and killed Louise, who had been as gentle as she could in ending her relationship with you after your arrogance and anger proved too much for her to stand. Then you murdered Hannah Hunt, who had done nothing to harm you save supporting her little sister. The evidence I have heard shows you to be a jealous man, soaked in self-pity, a man who holds women in utter contempt. This is no occasion to subject the family and friends of your victims to any delay or suspense. I therefore make clear at once that for each of these 3 murders, the sentence will be one of life imprisonment with a whole life order. That means a sentence from which you will never be released. Your brutal and cowardly attack had been planned over about 11 days. You conducted extensive research into the movements of Louise's father John, into her mother's Facebook page, into buying a crossbow, a knife and an air pistol, and even into the weather on the day of the attack. You bought rope, duct tape, petrol cans, the knife you used in the attack, and a crossbow. You wrote letters to your family dripping with self-pity. On the day of the attack, you first parked well away from the Hunt family home to check if Louise's father was there. Researching his work when you saw his car was indeed outside the house. You approached a second time with a bag of Louise's clothes and a thank you card to Carroll and John Hunt, obviously part of a plan to trick Mrs. Hunt into letting you in the house. You first talked to Carroll Hunt on the doorstep and persuaded her to admit you. She spoke kindly to you, but you then attacked her, stabbing her to death within moments of entering. You then left the house to collect the crossbow. Louise Hunt had been working in a building in the garden of the house. When she came in, you restrained her with duct tape round her wrists and ankles and gagged her. You kept her there alive for over 2.5 hours. She must have come to realise you'd already killed her mother. During that time, you raped her. Then you murdered her by shooting her with the crossbow as her sister Hannah was about to enter the house. Hannah Hunt was in a rush. She saw you and realised something was very wrong. You then shot her with the crossbow, causing an injury she could never hope to survive, but she remained alive long enough to see the unspeakable violence you had already inflicted on her mother and her sister. Hannah was able to call for help, but when the emergency services arrived, they could not save her. You had fled. You were arrested the next day, whereupon you made a last-minute attempt to kill yourself. I have heard John Hunt, Aimee Hunt and Alex Klein speak of their dreadful loss. They were difficult to listen to, given the devastation and heartbreak they recounted. They spoke of Carroll, Louise and Hannah as bringing joy, colour and happiness into the lives of everyone they knew. They were funny, hard-working and caring people. Each precious life, so full of potential, of future successes and celebrations, torn away by your appalling violence. The statements of John and Aimee Hunt also demonstrated great courage and determination that your terrible crimes will not define them or stop them leading the lives that Carroll, Louise and Hannah Hunt would have wished for them. They showed a gentle heroism of which you, Carl Clifford, can only dream. I've already announced the ultimate sentence I will impose. I now need to set out the technical legal reasoning behind the sentences I have decided upon. To deal with lesser matters, I will impose concurrent terms of 1 year's imprisonment for counts 1 and 2, the possession of the crossbow and the possession of the knife. I choose those sentences on the basis of category A2 under the Sentencing Council guidelines, with the aggravation of their planned use and the threat to the crossbow posed to police officers on the 10th of July. The only mitigation is your lack of previous convictions and, to a limited extent, your age. After a trial, the sentence would have been 15 months, but I deduct 20% for your guilty plea well before trial. The surcharge provisions apply and the order can be drawn up accordingly. I make the order for the deprivation of the items on the list uploaded onto the digital case system by the prosecution, including the crossbow, your laptop and phone. The proper sentence for rape is guided by the Sentencing Council. I find the rape of Louise Hunt to fall into the highest range of the top category 1A for the reasons identified by the prosecution. There is no element of double counting, as I have to impose a concurrent sentence given the nature of the sentence for the murders. I therefore take the upper end of the range of 19 years. There is mitigation in your lack of previous convictions, but serious aggravation in the planning of the crime. I will therefore pass a sentence of 20 years imprisonment for that offence. There are no Sentencing Council guidelines currently in force for the offence of false imprisonment, and the circumstances of that offence are so intertwined with the murders that it is hard to separate them. But in any event, it has to be concurrent with the life sentences, so double counting and totality are not issues. Louise Hunt's detention was prolonged, planned, in her own home, and it falls within the Sentencing Council definition of domestic abuse. For this offence, you are also entitled to a deduction for your guilty plea. I therefore pass a sentence after that 20% reduction of 8 years imprisonment. Guidance on the imposition of the mandatory life sentence custodial term is set out in Schedule 21 of the Sentencing Act 2020. A whole life order is normally to be imposed for the murder of 2 or more people where each murder involves a substantial degree of premeditation or planning. Such a disposal is a rare one and reserved for only the most extreme cases. I have considered the guidance of the Court of Appeal in the decisions of Stewart and others, of Kigundu and Osborne. I will not add to the length of these remarks by rehearsing what is set out with great clarity in those judgments, save to highlight 2 points. First, Schedule 21 must be applied in a flexible, not rigid way to achieve a just result. Second, that although paragraph 2.2 of that schedule may have had in mind 2 murders planned then committed on separate occasions, those provisions do not exclude the most severe order being made for multiple killings on the same day. I am satisfied so that I am sure that you both planned and contemplated killing all 3 of your victims. I've already mentioned your planning. You knew the routine and habits of that household. You clearly anticipated that Carroll Hunt would be in the house as you went equipped to trick your way inside. You must have known Louise Hunt would be working in the building in the garden, as you knew her routine, and she was the obvious target to be raped and murdered. You knew the routines of the household. You were there for over 4 hours and must have anticipated that Hannah Hunt would return. While you had used Louise Hunt's phone to ensure John Hunt would not be home any time soon, you made no such inquiry about Hannah. You would have known she wore a uniform for work, which she would be bound to come home to change before doing anything else in the evening. I am sure that Hannah too was part of your premeditation and that you intended to murder her if the chance presented itself. Those findings alone could lead to the imposition of a whole life term, but there are 4 further very serious aggravating factors. First, the relevant section of the schedule is triggered by, quote, the murder of 2 or more persons, I stress, or more. It seems to me the fact there were, quote, more, unquote, must be a relevant factor for a judge to have in mind. Otherwise the courts would be saying the murder of 3 people added nothing to the sentence for the murder of 2, an unthinkable proposition. Second, the rape of Louise Hunt, of which the jury found you guilty last week, which offence was part of the same plan and the same course of conduct as the 3 killings. Third, these murders took place against a woman with whom you had been in an intimate relationship and her family, and so is within the Sentencing Council guidance on domestic abuse, which context makes crimes even more serious. Fourth, The murders of Louise and Hannah Hunt must have involved them becoming aware of the murders you had already committed, thereby inflicting dreadful mental suffering before death, a specified aggravating factor under the schedule. You have been referred to at times as a former soldier. In many cases, that would serve as significant mitigation. Not so in your case, however, as your 2 years in the army included 286 days at home claiming to be ill. You never saw active service, and your utility to the armed forces can be gleaned in a parting comment from your commanding officer that, quote, his character is wholly unsuited to military employment, and he has no care nor concern beyond himself, unquote. There are 3 matters of mitigation. First, your lack of previous convictions. Second, your relative youth, though you were already 26 years old by the time of these offences. Third, you pleaded guilty to the offences of murder, though not at the first opportunity. I have reflected on all 3 aspects. The Sentencing Council guidance makes clear there may be cases where a guilty plea should lead the court to draw back from imposing a whole life order. I have considered and rejected that course, as the factors in favour of such an order are so compelling that they far outweigh all those pieces of mitigation. I am left in no doubt that this is a sentence I must impose. The sentences I pass are therefore: for possession of an offensive weapon, the crossbow, 1 year's imprisonment, concurrent. For the possession of an offensive weapon, the knife, 1 year's imprisonment, concurrent. For the murder of Carroll Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order, the early release provisions are not to apply. For the false imprisonment of Louise Hunt, 8 years imprisonment, concurrent. For the rape of Louise Hunt, 20 years imprisonment, concurrent. For the murder of Louise Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order. The early release provisions are not to apply. For the murder of Hannah Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order.